What's up, duelists, and welcome to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. And I have a special one for you today because whenever I upload a ban list discussion / ban list prediction, which I recently did, people always ask me, Josh, do you think this card could come back or that card should come back? And quite frankly, whenever I make those videos, I don't really include all of the cards that I think could come off the ban list, because I think for the current format or what kind of decks are currently in the format, I think it's most relevant which kind of cards they decide to take away from them. I understand that it is an interesting question as well. And so today I took the time to look at every single card that is currently banned in Yu-Gi-Oh! Talk about why they were banned, maybe try to give a little bit of context as well as to when and what exactly it was that made those cards so powerful. Some of them, of course, there's more interesting stories to tell than others, because some of them are just like, well, this card is a floodgate, or this card, way too broken. But I tried to provide some context because, I've been playing this game for a very long time. As a result, though, this video is going to be a little bit longer than usual. So I suggest you lean back, you listen in, a little bit of history of Yu-Gi-Oh!, just rambling about design choices in Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, and you're going to notice that there's going to be some very, very common patterns in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that end up on the Forbidden and Limited list. There are a couple cards on there that I feel like, quite frankly, should never come back, but there's a couple ones that I think could easily come back and not change much. And then there's some that could come back and actually have a meaningful impact on the format. So I hope everyone enjoys today's discussion. It's going to be a little bit longer, so I understand that not everyone might have the time to watch it all in one sitting. But if you do end up watching it, then let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope you enjoy. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Without further ado, let's get started. Dude, I realized when I opened the list this morning, there's a lot of banned cards. So for some of them, I'm going to try to make it a little bit quicker. And for others, I guess we'll have a little bit more of a rant going on. But let's just jump right in and think about whether or not these cards could come back or not. And we're just gonna go in alphabetical order because that's how it is on the website. And we're gonna get through it together. All right, it's gonna be fun. All right, and we're starting at the very top, of course, with yugioh, the Ancient Sentinel. Now, I guess this card I should talk about together with the other one. Where is he? Kelbeck, the Ancient Vanguard. Okay, immediately in the beginning, we're already going off of the alphabetical order. Yugioh and Kelbeck, I guess, have to be looked at together. Both banned because of specifically one effect. If this card is sent from hand or deck to the grave, you can activate this effect. Each player sends the top 5 cards of their deck to the graveyard. This is the effect that both of these cards share. They both have a bonus effect if Exchange of the Spirit is in your graveyard, but that's not relevant. Or mostly wasn't relevant. Most people didn't play this. These cards have obviously been banned because of Ishizu Tearlament, which was probably the strongest deck in Yu-Gi-Oh's history ever, and might even be the strongest deck ever to this day. I don't even know if any of the recent decks come close to it. So Tearlament has some other pretty significant hits, but at the same time, I don't think these cards should come back because I don't think Tearlaments would be the only deck to ever abuse these cards. I think there would probably be other ways to abuse these. And honestly, it's just the sheer amount of, like, sending 5 cards from the top of the deck to the graveyard is not only incredibly powerful, but there's also so much variance that these cards introduce into the game, right? There's so, which is the fun part, I suppose, of Tearlament for people, is the little bit of a gamba aspect. But it can also feel really frustrating. Like, it creates these games where, like, you feel like you should be winning or you shouldn't be winning, and then, like, random shit happens when 5 cards get sent from the deck to the graveyard, and then everything can happen. I think also considering that both of these are fairies, and therefore have synergy with cards like Herald of the Arclight or Diviner of the Herald, right? They are super easily accessible. I think it's good that these are banned, and I personally would not bring them back. But they are not the most powerful things on the ban list. I will say there's other things on here that are more problematic than the Ishizu Millers, I would say. They're not in the category of they can never come back. I could see a world in which those cards could come back. All right. Next up, we have a card that is going. We're not going to talk about this very long. This is a card, Arch Nemesis Protoss, that lets you declare an attribute, destroy all monsters with that attribute, and then neither player can summon monsters with that attribute until the end of the next turn. And because it is a dark, you can always call dark with this when you're going first, but most of the time, especially post-side, when you know what deck your opponent is playing, you can always call the attribute that they need the most, and then you basically just FTK and skip their turn. Funnily enough, I think this is both fun and incredibly weird, is that this card once was banned, and then they brought it back, and then they banned it again. Which, in my opinion, I think still goes down as one of the stupidest ban list decisions ever to bring this card back. I mean, if you had to rank the decisions, it's like, okay, printing the card was already a mistake. Banning the card was good. Everyone liked it. Everyone was happy when Protoss got banned. Bringing it back, incredible. Honestly, incredible that they ever thought it was a good idea to bring this back. So of course, as soon as they brought it back, people started using it again, which is exactly what no one wanted. No one wanted this card to see play. So they banned it again. And now it's banned, and I hope it stays banned forever. Yeah. All right. Artifact Mjolnir. This card is on here because it says if this card is special summoned during your opponent's turn, target an artifact in your grave, special summon it in defense. Also, you cannot special monsters until the end of this turn. This card is banned, which is, I think this card is worth explaining, even though it hasn't been banned for that long. So most people probably remember this, but I think it's interesting to talk about the specific reason why this card is banned, because it is a very specific ruling related thing and wording related thing. So of course, the card itself is pretty fair. You know, it's designed to be an artifact card that summons other artifacts out of your graveyard, which is fine, right? Like the card itself is nothing too problematic. The problem is what happens when you summon this card to your opponent's turn, right? To your opponent's side of the field during your turn, if they're not playing an artifact deck, of course, right? Because, like, I think all of the artifacts, this card is mandatory on summon, so your opponent does not have a choice. They have to activate the effect of Artifact Mjolnir when you give it to them during your turn, because when it's during your turn, the card is summoned to your opponent. From your opponent's perspective, and from this card's perspective, it is your opponent's turn, so it is mandatory to activate. But you're gonna say, like, but they don't have an artifact in the graveyard, right? They don't have an artifact in the grave, so they can't resolve the effect, which is technically true. But because of how it's worded, it still happens. It's mandatory to activate even if you don't have an artifact in your grave. So you just skip the targeting part because you can't target. You don't have one. But because the card is worded in a way where it says special summon, also you cannot special summon until the end of the next turn, also is a conjunction in Yu-Gi-Oh! That always happens even if the first part doesn't happen. There's other ones like and if you do, which rely, like, basically there's A, and if you do, then do B, right? If it's and if you do, then if A doesn't happen, B doesn't happen either. With also, it always happens. So if this card said special summon it in defense position, and if you do, you can't special summon until the end of next turn, it would be no problem. It wouldn't lock your opponent because they don't have an artifact in the grave that they can summon. But because of this random ass ruling quirk, if you give this card to your opponent, it locks them into artifacts until the end of the next turn, which of course no deck is playing artifacts. Long story short, this card was banned because you could summon it to your opponent's side of the field with Imperial Princess Quinkery. And this is an interesting question, I suppose, which a lot of people have different opinions on this, but in general, it's just proven in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! That the ability to summon monsters to your opponent's side of the field is something that's very easy to be abused and very problematic, right? So a lot of people argued that this card should have been banned, Imperial Princess Quinkery, and not Artifact Mjolnir, because Artifact Mjolnir itself is not a problem and not that good of a card. And Imperial Princess Quinkery was the problem because it gives the monster to your opponent's side of the field, right? Which you can be on both sides of the argument. I mean, the thing is, like, they both pose a problem for future card design, because essentially what happens is if they leave Imperial Princess alive, then if they ever make another level 5 monster with a lock like Artifact Mjolnir, then the card becomes a problem again. if they leave Artifact Mjolnir alive, then if they make another card that summons to your opponent's side of the field, this becomes a problem, right? I think ultimately what we've learned over the course of the last couple of years is they should be careful with what kind of locks they put on cards, right? Like this could have been avoided if they just worded this card a little bit better. Also, they definitely need to stop printing cards that summon to the opponent's side of the field. Like that is just something that shouldn't exist in my opinion, unless it's very, very specific and they make sure it's being used for the intended way, right? Like they should not make cards that just like summon any type of monster to your opponent's side of the field, right? That's weird. Because like also game, like from a game perspective, why would you do that if it's not for like some sort of auto win, right? So yeah. Like Lost World. I mean, Lost World is fine because it gives your opponent a token, right? There's nothing, the token has no potential to floodgate the opponent, right? That's the thing, right? Okay, that's why Artifact Mjolnir is banned. And honestly, I know it sucks if you're an Artifact player, but I don't know any Artifact players, so I think it's fine. If they could bring this card back if they wanted, if they ban Quinkery, but they probably don't want to do that. And honestly, no one really misses Artifact Mjolnir, right? Here's another card that no one misses. Artifact Scythe. If this card is special summoned during your opponent's turn, your opponents cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. I don't think I need to get into detail why this card is banned. It's an artifact, so you do have to go through the motions of like destroying it and then bringing it back. But there was plenty of ways to do that. You know, most prominent probably DPE, popping it. You could send it to grave and then tag out Baron into it, which was something that people did. Please never bring Artifact Scythe back. Right? For some of the obvious floodgates, I'm gonna glance over it a little bit quicker because we don't have to discuss like whether Artifact Scythe should come back. It's not very interesting, right? Same thing for the barrier statues, which are up next on the list. We currently have 4 out of the 6 barrier statues banned in the TCG. Torrent, Stormwinds, Inferno, and Drought are currently banned. They all, funnily enough, Konami did not think that these cards were ban-worthy enough just because they exist. They needed to be searchable and actually played before they did something about them, right? So, Barrier Statue of the Torrent was banned because Mermail was searching it. Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds was obviously banned because of Fluandereeze. It was the first one that got banned. Barrier Statue of the Inferno is actually a funny one because barriers... Okay, it's a chain that was going on, all right? With another card. Where is it? So, people were playing Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo in Mitsurugi, I believe it was, because they could search it with Gallant Granite. They would make a rank 4 without normal summoning. They would search Fossil Dyna and they would summon it, right? And so Konami decided, let's get rid of Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo. I think it was in 2025. It was that one ban list where they banned so many floodgates, right? They got rid of Fossil Dyna. I think it was after YCS Anaheim. But of course, and here's a smart thing that they did that they don't usually do. They did something really smart and preemptive because if you're searching Fossil Dyna with Gallant Granite, you might as well be searching Barrier Statue of the Drought instead. So they were like, okay, if we ban Fossil Dyna, we have to ban this too, because otherwise people are just going to move from this to this, which is effectively the same thing, which was smart. And they even went one step further, which was banning Barrier Statue of the Inferno, because probably someone pointed out that like, hey, if we ban the 2 targets for Gallant Granite, they could just make Infernal Flame Banshee instead, which is also a rank 4 that searches, but it searches Pyro. So we have to get rid of this card as well. Otherwise, people are going to search this instead of this, right? And so we got basically the Fossil Dyna ban alongside these 2 preemptive bans as well, which is all good. But it does beg the question of why are the light and the dark barrier statues still around? And the answer to that question is, well, no one is really playing them right now. You know, there's nothing really doing those barrier statue locks at the moment. I would still argue we should get back or get rid of the other 2 as well. But that's besides the point. That's not the discussion today. But all of these obviously are banned because they are floodgates and they don't let the opponent play the game, right? That's essentially this, and that's why they should never come back. All right. Gofu the Vague Shadow is a card that was banned with the introduction or shortly after the introduction of Link monsters. Because this card says while you control no monsters, you can just special summon it and it makes 2 tokens. These tokens cannot be tributed or used as synchro material, even though Gofu itself is a level 5 tuner. Which of course was a card that didn't really see that much play before Link monsters were introduced. I think in Monarchs, people sometimes played it to give tribute fodder, even though you couldn't tribute the tokens, but you could tribute the Gofu. So it was basically like you would destroy, you would tribute over the Gofu, and then the tokens were just like bonus. There was some Metal Foe decks that played it, yeah, because the Gofu being a tuner let you make Ultimaya Zolkin. Yeah, oh yeah, the Kuraz was popping the tokens for draws, right? I remember, yeah, that was that. So the card saw a little bit of play before Link monsters, but it never really took off. It never really was anything special. It was just a fine card. But then when Link monsters came out, of course, this card was not designed with Link monsters in mind, as you can clearly tell. Otherwise, it probably would have said cannot be used as Link material as well. But as soon as Link monsters came out, this card was just basically 3 bodies that were really easy to make use of. Funnily enough, right now, I'm not even sure what people would do with Gofu. Like, imagine a world where Gofu is legal. What is a good combo that you can do with Gofu? Like, how would you abuse Gofu right now in modern Yu-Gi-Oh? What is even the best thing you can do with like generic? I mean, it's not yummy combo because you can't use the token as synchro material, right? So you can make a Link 1 with one of the tokens, but you don't have a level 1 next to it, right? That doesn't work. It makes the Raid Raptor Link 2 and Rusty on its own. There were probably a bunch of really strong combos you could make with it. I mean, it's just an unfortunate thing with cards like this, but sometimes they just create a new mechanic that work in a way that didn't exist before. And now I think this card would still be pretty strong, all things considered. It would still be a pretty strong card in the current format. I'm not sure exactly what people would do with it, but there has to be a way to do something with it, right? There's no way this doesn't do a lot of things, right? There's 3 free bodies in Link Link formats are not fine, right? It's also level 5, so maybe K9. I don't know. Like, yeah. At the very minimum, the 2 tokens can make an IP and a body, but that wouldn't be that problematic in my opinion. But I think there's more. I think there's more stuff you can do with it for sure. Okay. Block Dragon. This one is an interesting one, and I say interesting because for some reason, and we'll talk about in a second why I don't know the reason. For some reason, this card is allowed in Master Duel. For some reason, Master Duel thinks this card is okay, but this card says, must be special summoned by banishing 3 Earths from hand or grave, and this is from hand or graveyard. Rock monsters can't be destroyed except by battle. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, you can add up to 3 rock monsters from your deck to your hand whose total level equals 8. You can only use this effect of Block Dragon once per turn. So adding 3 monsters from your deck to your hand is once per turn. Unfortunately, I suppose, for Black, you cannot do this multiple times. However, what you can do multiple times is summon it multiple times. So this card on its own generates anywhere from like 5 to 6 cards because you summon itself like 2 or 3 times and you search 3 monsters with it. And the things that you can search with Block Dragon, you know, sometimes we have cards in Yu-Gi-Oh that generate a lot of card advantage, but they're fine because all of the cards that they're searching are like kind of ass. The stuff that you can search with Block Dragon is everything but ass. There's so many good cards that you can search, even though it's rocks, which is not the most common archetype, but like Koakimaru Guardian, Adamancipator Researcher, just to name like 2. There are really, really good cards. And there is actually a deck with Block Dragon going kind of crazy in Master Duel right now, which is like there's like a Magnet Warrior, Block Dragon, Adamancipator pile that is pretty strong in Master Duel right now. And like the only thing to stop it is like Hualos or maybe Drollin Lockbird or Maxi, I suppose, if we're talking Master Duel. We'll talk about Maxi later. But in general, I would not like to have Block Dragon back, even though Master Duel is kind of the proof that it can exist. The decks with Block Dragon are not like tier 0, right? It's just like the play pattern of those decks is pretty broken. It's basically like if you go second against those kind of decks, they do attempt to just auto win the game on turn 1. And if they resolve Block Dragon, they will win the game on turn 1. So it could exist without completely ruining the game, but I would not like it. I am much happier in the TCG where this card is banned. And I'm a fan of Magnet Warriors. I like the Magnet Warrior deck. It's kind of cool, but when it gets like too sloppy, I don't like it anymore. So I think it's good that Block Dragon is banned in the TCG. And I personally would not bring it back. But once again, similar to something like the Shizu Millers, it's not the most broken card on here. It wouldn't completely ruin the game if it came back, but it still is a good riddance, in my opinion. All right. Next up, we have a card that I believe is this card banned in all formats, even Cyberstein? So Cyberstein is unbanned somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Or is it still banned everywhere? It was banned in all... No, it was banned everywhere, but I think it was they brought it back. It was unbanned for a bit in 2022. Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember something about it. I don't know. Well, Cyberstein for 5,000 life points lets you cheat out any fusion monster from your extra deck, which is something that typically you can only do once because 5,000 life points. But there has been ways to cheat this as well. We played it in some tier list at some point. Yeah. Honestly, like the thing with Cyberstein is like this is probably from the cards that we've seen so far. As crazy as it is, I think this is probably the most unbannable card that we've looked at so far today. Because quite frankly, if this card is legal, the thing is like it probably wouldn't be used for good. I'm not saying it would be healthy. I'm just saying it's probably the most unbannable so far. More than Gofu? I think more than Gofu, yeah. The reason is it turns into Psychic. Yeah, I remember it was legal in Master Duel for once, and I think we did like a random funny FTK where we turned it into a Psychic, and then we used like a card that says you don't have to pay life points for Psychic effects, and then you could Cyberstein over and over. In Master Duel, I think it should never come back because we have Sprite Elf, so there's a very easy way to tutor out Cyberstein, where you go like Sprite Sprint, send it to grave, and then Sprite Elf, bring it back. In a world without Sprite Elf, I think it's very hard to tutor out Cyberstein. I think we did it with a Danger deck where we were planning to just draw it. Like we were just drawing our entire deck with Dangers, and then eventually we had Cyberstein. I think that was the thing. It wasn't really a good deck though. It was more like a gimmick. And the thing is like, when you go into the realm of gimmicky FTKs in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's a lot of stuff that is legal, right? Like, there's a lot of gimmicky FTKs that are allowed. And the word gimmicky also, like there's Gimmick Puppets, which is literally an FTK deck that exists and is allowed to exist. I think Cyberstein would probably see very little play. And if anything, it would be the same playstyle as a lot of other combo / FTK decks that already exist in the game. So I think Cyberstein, I don't necessarily want it back, but I don't think it'd be a problem if it came back personally. I don't love the card, but I don't think it'd be that big of a deal. You can search it with Gear Gigant X, but Gear Gigant X does need 2 machines. So, yeah. It's never used for anything good. Yeah, right. But if we... That's the thing, right? If we use that argument... If we use that argument today, then most cards... We're just going to have to say, like, yeah, don't bring it back, right? Because a lot of the cards on here are not being used for good. That's why they are banned, right? But, like... you still have to evaluate, like, is a Cyberstein FTK better than, for example, Gimmick Puppet, right? And the answer is probably not. A Cyberstein FTK deck would probably not be more powerful than Gimmick Puppets. And Gimmick Puppets is a legal deck in the game, right? And so would Cyberstein be more problematic than that if it came back? Probably not. Now, you could be of the opinion that something like Gimmick Puppet shouldn't exist either, which is valid. I agree with you, right? But at the state where we are right now with modern Yu-Gi-Oh, if Cyberstein came back, I believe it wouldn't change much. That's what I believe. It would exist, and if you ever run into it, it would be miserable. However, I don't think it would happen very much. I don't think many people would use Cyberstein. I don't think it would be competitively viable. Okay. Dandelion. This is very similar to Gofu, a card that is that was good beforehand. I mean, you know this as like a classic card in like Edison or Tengu Plant. Like, it's a really good Yu-Gi-Oh card even before Link Monsters came out. But Link Monsters basically make this card impossible to come back, even more so than Gofu, because Dandelion is not once per turn. So this card, if it's sent to the grave in any way, it just creates 2 tokens, and they cannot be tributed for a tribute summon. But they can be used for Link summons, and if you have any way to get more Dandelions into rotation, you could just send it to grave over and over and get more and more tokens. Now, what exactly would you do with it? I don't know, but I'm sure there's going to be some, or there could be some like plant link strategy where you abuse Dandelion like crazy. It also is full Yami combo, yes, but I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of cards that are full Yami combo. I don't think that is the reason why it's problematic, because also like in Yami, you don't have a way to like revive it, I don't think. So you wouldn't be abusing the non-once per turn thing. It would just be like a couple of bodies from a normal summon, which that's something that other cards can do as well. There is a plant circular. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to tutor this card out from the deck. You know, you can foolish it and get your tokens. You can summon it with Lone Fire, link it off. You can send it for the circular that plants have. Like, there's a bunch of shit that you can do with Dandelion. So unfortunately, with the introduction of Link Monsters, this card can probably never come back unless they give it an errata and say like you can't use the tokens for a Link summon, or they put a once per turn on it. But yeah. All right, Jin, Releaser of Rituals. When you ritual summon a monster, you can banish this card from your grave as one of the materials. If a player ritual summons using this card, the other player cannot special summon while that ritual summon monster is face up on the field. All right, that's a different flavor of Fossil Dyna, essentially. We're gonna have a couple of these cards that are basically, it boils down to just a floodgate. This card was banned, just to give you some context, because this card was printed in 2009. As you can see down here in Stardust Overdrive. This card is old, and it was legal for a long time, which was because it didn't really see much play until there was a deck that could actually use it to its fullest potential. It was Necros. The reason why this card was so good in Necros was because Necros could access it really easily with cards like Lavalval Chain, sending it from deck to grave, or also people played Armageddon Knight for it, just to get Jin. And the other reason why it was so good in Necros is because Necros had a level 3 ritual monster. Like the problem in a lot of other ritual strategies previously was that Jin, it's not treated as the entire material, right? So it would be like 2, 3, 4 card combos to ritual summon with Jin in other decks. But in Necros, it was super easy because you didn't have to draw the Jin. You would just send it for Lavalval Chain, and then all you had to do was ritual summon Necros of Clausulus with it. So you know, it was super easy in Necros, and that's what got it banned essentially. Lavalval is the problem, because how do you search this? I mean, here's the thing. Yes, if they brought this back, I don't know if it would immediately see a bunch of play because it's way harder to access it. At the same time, this card, it just doesn't offer anything to the game. Like, there's ways to find it. Tour Guide, yeah, but then play a ritual deck with Tour Guide, you know? But there's ways. Aerial Eater, it's a Fiend monster, so it's not that hard to get there. Like, you know, Fiendsmith can access it at any point, pretty much. Cherubini can dump it because it's a level 3. there's a lot of ways to find this card, even without Lavalval Chain. And even if I can't think of a deck that would immediately benefit from this, I think there's no reason to bring it back. I mean, it's kind of similar to Cyberstein in that way, though, right? Like, there's a lot of other decks that can tutor out weird situational floodgates if they go full combo. Like, a lot of decks go full combo and win the game. But at the same time, like, you would... I think, in general, when it comes to floodgates, we should leave them all on the ban list. Like, yeah. We don't need Jin Releaser of Rituals back. Eclipse Wyvern. All right, Eclipse Wyvern is from now on going to take over Cyberstein as the most unbannable card we've talked about today so far. If this card is sent to the grave, banish a level 7 or higher light or dark dragon from your deck. If this card is banished from the grave, you can add the monster banished by this effect to your hand. This card, legitimately, I believe, could come back and is one of the more interesting ones because there's a couple of cards we're going to talk about today. There's a couple of cards we're going to talk about today where I'm going to say, like, oh, this could come back and it would change nothing, right? Which, in my opinion, is something they should still do. Like, they should unban those cards, but at the same time, it wouldn't be very exciting. And we'll get to some examples later. Eclipse Wyvern, however, is one of the cards where I could see this card seeing play. Why did it get banned in the first place? It was the way that they chose, or one of the things that they chose to hit the Guard Dragon deck in 2019, which was basically like a predecessor to Dragon Link, you could say. It was like a Danger, Thunder, Guard Dragon pile with the Guard Dragon Link monsters, LP, Pisty, and Agripain. And you would very often, you would tutor out Eclipse Wyvern with LP to summon it from the deck, and then the Eclipse Wyvern would banish. It was sometimes Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, but a lot of people also played the Chaos Emperor Dragon Retrain, which was a prize card at the time, so not everyone had access to it, but it was still a good option in that deck, and so on and so forth. And so that was a very, very powerful deck in 2019, and banning Eclipse Wyvern was one of the things that they did to neuter that deck. However, and we're going to talk about him in a second, they also banned Guard Dragon LP eventually. I don't know if they banned them at the same time, or if it was Eclipse Wyvern first and then LP. I don't exactly remember. But the fact that Guard Dragon LP is banned makes Eclipse Wyvern a lot worse. Of course, there's still easy ways to access it because it is a dragon, right? You can send it for Dragon Ravine. At the same time, I just don't think that's that problematic, right? There's plenty of things that you can do with Dragon Ravine that are good. Sending the Strudo, sending Abza Router to search a rocket. I think sending Eclipse Wyvern and then banishing a Red Eyes Darkness Metal or something and then adding it back later if you can banish the Eclipse Wyvern is fine. I think this card could come back. And Dragon Link might use it or might not use it, but I think Eclipse Wyvern is okay. All right, Fairy Tail Snow. This card is legal in Master Duel, and I believe also legal in the OCG, but of course, a very powerful effect here once again. If this card's in your grave, quick effect, banish 7 other cards from hand, field, or grave. To special summon it, not once per turn, and on summon it, it lets you book a monster your opponent controls. Really powerful card. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I personally don't miss Fairy Tail Snow, but it is a very fun card to play with. And I could see them bringing it back. I don't think it is that problematic if they did. And one of the things that makes me think they might do it is because we are getting Fairy Tail support in the upcoming sets. So I think Fairy Tail Snow is not only somewhat likely to return, but I also think it wouldn't be that big of a problem. I mean, one of the biggest things is like Snow's biggest time was always the ones where there was a lot of milling involved. Like when there was easy ways to get a lot of cards into your grave to just banish for Snow, that's when it was at its best. You know, like to Tearlaments, Chaos Ruler, and stuff like that. I think this card could still see play in some decks, like Zombie Vampire still exists, which is like a budget Chaos Ruler. So there's still ways to get a bunch of cards into your graveyard, and I'm sure a bunch of combo decks would still use Fairy Tail Snow. But honestly, with how some of the more modern decks work now and some like more power creep that's happened, I think Fairy Tail Snow is not the most outrageous thing anymore. Does it work with Malice? It technically does work with Malice, and I think I've seen people play Grass Malice in the OCG at some point with this card, but it never took off. I mean, like, that's the thing, right? In theory, yes, you can banish Malice cards for Fairy Tail Snow, and if you ever get to do that, it's really broken. The problem is that Malice is not that good at getting that many monsters in the graveyard, or that many cards in the graveyard even. It's not like a tier limit where at the end of your combo, your graveyard is going to have 20 cards. So you can bring back Snow a bunch of times. Also, the most powerful way to abuse Snow is by bringing it back a couple of times on your own turn as extra link fodder or extra synchro material or extra Xyz material, which is something that Malice probably couldn't do because they just don't have enough cards in rotation in the graveyard, right? Because it doesn't, like, I guess it link climbs a little bit, so you have a couple of extra link monsters in the grave, but nothing too crazy that you can banish. So, Fairy Tail Snow, I could see it coming back. I wouldn't be too mad if they did it. I'm not really missing it too much either. I'm kind of indifferent on it. I'm kind of indifferent on Fairy Tail Snow. They could bring it back. I could see it, and I wouldn't hate it, honestly. But it is one of those cards that, like, similar to Eclipse Wyvern, both of those cards, there's definitely a world where they bring them back, and then in the future they have to ban them again because there's another card that comes out that makes them broken, right? Like, that's definitely something that could happen. Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Fiber Jar, which is very funny. This card has been banned forever. I don't even remember. I didn't even see a format or experience a format where this card was legal, I'm pretty sure. I think this was banned like 2003 or something. Flip, each player shuffles all cards from their hand, field, and grave into the deck and then draws 5 cards. This card essentially resets the entire game except for the life points. I think this card is more so banned for logistical reasons. I think it's a very funny card, and I think it would be hilarious if they brought it back. I don't think it would be a problem, personally. I think it would be more so a meme, and I think if someone actually found a way to make it work, I would be happy about that. I think that would be hilarious, but I don't think it would actually be good. I think the reason why it's banned is just because back in the day, it was actually a playable card where you could like set it if you were behind, and then you would kind of reset the game, which does cost a lot of time because you're basically restarting the game in the middle of the game, which is something that back then was a problem. Like, imagine playing like a GOAT format duel for 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden Fiber Jar just resets the game, right? And like, you can see how that would cause problems at like tournaments and stuff. Nowadays, that wouldn't really work, right? Like, nowadays it wouldn't really work to just reset the game because people would just remove the Fiber Jar. It's just way too easy to deal with the face down. You would have to build a deck around it to even consistently resolve it. But what's the win condition of that deck? What is the win condition of a Fiber Jar deck? Because like, your deck is just built to resolve Fiber Jar, but then like, you're just shuffling everything back, and then what are you gonna do it again? Like, how are you winning, right? You're just not winning. So yeah, it'd be very funny with Runix. Okay, because Fiber Jar doesn't recycle the banished pile, then okay, right. So you banish your opponent's cards, then you Fiber Jar, refresh your stuff, and then do it again until they don't have. I mean, yeah, but you can see that that would be super gimmicky, right? Like, it'd be funny. I would probably do that and try to make it work on Master Duel like once, but it wouldn't actually be a meta deck, right? It wouldn't be good. So from a competitive standpoint, could Fiber Jar come back? Absolutely, 100%. This card does not need to be banned for the sake of competitive gameplay, but I think they just don't want to bring it back because it has some other weird implication. But I think they could. I think legitimately it'd be funny if they did it. I think it'd be funny. Okay. Fishborg Blaster is another one of those ancient cards that is banned because it doesn't say once per turn. If you control a face-up level 3 or lower water monster, you can discard a card, special summon this card from your grave. If this card is used as synchro material, all the other synchros must be water. So this card is banned because it isn't once per turn, so you can just keep bringing it back over and over and over again. So there's been a couple of decks in the past that would use this as a way to like loop it. Like it was played in like Frog FTK and stuff like that. at the same time, it's also just a good generic, like a good card in general. Even if you're not looping this guy, it was a good card back in the day where you would just have a tuner access at all times, whether it was with like frogs, with treeborn frog, this would make a formula synchron immediately every turn. And there was other applications for it as well. I do think this card would see play nowadays, because I think this card would see play in Mermail. Like, unironically, just a level 1 tuner that you can spam as many times as you want, and it discards for cost as well, so you can discard Dragoon, and it would trigger. Like, this card would see play 100% as a target for Coelacanth. Yeah, this card would 100% see play in Mermail at the very least. And you would probably summon it back like anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a turn to make something crazy happen. And there's probably other decks that could use it as well. So this is a card that if they decided to bring it back, it could still do a lot of crazy things in the game. So I personally wouldn't bring it back, but I will say I can't think of like an infinite loop that you can do, because you do have to discard a card every time. I'm not sure if there's some FTK looping stuff going on these days, but still, just for the sake of just being a very strong card, I think it's better if it stays banned, because this card goes crazy in water decks. It really does. What if it got a once per duel restriction like Law Bulb? Then it would be fine. It would still be good. I think even if this card says once per duel, I think there's a world where you would play that, or you would consider playing that in like Mermail. I think that'd be something that people would still consider. We've talked about Fossil Dyna. Gimmick Puppet Nightmare is... We've essentially already talked about this when we talked about Artifact Mjolnir, because this card is the exact same thing, even better. So if this card is special summoned, you cannot special any monster for the rest of this turn except Gimmick Puppet monsters. This is once again this is even worse than Mjolnir in some ways, because this doesn't activate. So what you do is you give it to your opponent, and then they cannot do anything about it. They cannot even negate its own effect or whatever. Like this just applies. There's nothing you can do with it. The only caveat is, because it doesn't say until the end of the next turn, you have to give it to them during their turn. But there were cards like Branded Expulsion, Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. We're not gonna restart the discussion on is the card that is summoned the problem, or is the card that summons it the problem. But the reason why this card's banned is, of course, because it skips your opponent's turn. So good riddance. Grinder Golem. Grinder Golem falls in the same category as Gofu, because this card, you can just summon it to your opponent's side of the field, and as an exchange, you get 2 tokens. But if you special it, you cannot normal or set during the turn. So this card is essentially, in some ways, it's a weaker Gofu, because you don't get a normal summon during the turn, and you also don't get 3 bodies, you just get 2. However, because you give it to your opponent's side of the field, there's a couple of implications there. Like, for example, I used this card in Danger FTK with Slash Draw, where one of the most important things about it was that you summon it to your opponent's side of the field. So your opponent has a card that you can then use Slash Draw with, because Slash Draw requires your opponent to have cards on the field. Also, it's way more loopable than Gofu, because you can bounce it back to your hand after giving it to your opponent and then summon it again, because it works like Lava Golem, that you can summon multiple, you just don't get a normal summon. So, and then there's other cards, of course, that benefit from your opponent controlling cards. Like, for example, one of the bigger things about this card in the Danger FTK back then was that it made your opponent impossible to use Imperm. So essentially, it was a crazy combination where back then we had Outer Entity Azathoth, which is a card we're talking about later, but Azathoth would make it so they can't use monster effects, and Grinder Golem would make it so they can't use Imperm. So essentially, they couldn't hand trap you anymore. So Grinder Golem, really powerful combo enabler, and just link spam, and eventually relatively quickly got banned after the introduction of link monsters. Not immediately, so that when I played it, it was still with link monsters around. But yeah, really broken card, and probably for the best that is banned. Jaugen the Spiritualist says neither player can special summon monsters. we've looked at plenty of these already. Don't need to say anything about that. That card needs to be banned. You might notice a recurring theme here on the ban list, and you might also notice some inconsistencies when you think about like, oh, why is this card on here, but this other card that does the exact same thing, why is this card not on here? I don't know. I can't answer that question. Also, and the next question you might ask yourselves, like, oh, if they've realized on these 10, 20, 30, 40 floodgates that are all banned, don't they learn that making these cards is problematic? Don't they understand? I don't know, man. I can't tell you. Level Eater. If this card's in your grave, target a level 5 or higher monster you control, reduces level by 1, and if you do, special summon this card. This card cannot be tributed except for a tribute summon. So this card is completely insane because, I mean, I don't have to tell you why this card is loopable. This card is loopable as hell. And it was printed before Synchros, I believe. When did this come out? 2009? Oh no, it was made for Synchro summoning, actually. It was made for Synchro summoning, but of course it's abusable as hell. And it also, like, with link monsters around, there's no way. There's no way that you could bring back Level Eater ever. This card is completely insane. Magical Scientist. Pay 1,000 life points to special summon a level 6 or lower fusion from your extra deck. That fusion monster cannot attack directly and is returned to the extra deck at the end of this turn. Yeah, okay. This guy is completely nuts too. Those are some really old cards that we're looking at right now that, like, so this thing, right? Like, even before we had links or synchros or whatever, even then this card had to be banned because there was plenty of ways to abuse this. Of course, you have 8,000 life points, so you can do it 7 times. You can summon 7. This is 7 instant fusions on a monster. 7 instant fusions on a monster, which is probably very easy to tutor these days because it's a level 1 dark spellcaster. There's got to be ways to find that. And I don't think we need to discuss why 7 instant fusions is a problem. So yes, Magical Scientist can never return. Can never return unless they change its card text. All right. So, I don't know if I want to take this one seriously or not, but of course, this card has been banned in the TCG for years now, and no one is mad about it. Well, no, actually, it's not true. Some people are mad about it. Currently, we are anxiously waiting for the day that that it's also banned in Master Duel, but it's of course one of the bigger debates, I feel like, in Master. To me, it's crazy to me that people still argue about this. Because yes, there's a lot of decks in Yu-Gi-Oh right now that special summon excessively, but that's exactly why this card needs to go. Every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh relies on special summoning these days. It is a core part of our game. And this card simply says if your opponent moves or breathes, you draw a card. Essentially making it so the player that resolves this card wins the game. Which is slightly different than the Molcharmies. Some people think the Molcharmies are the same, which... They're strong cards, but they're not the same as Maxi. There's more realistic ways to make boards under Charmies that don't give your opponent 8 cards. So as it boils down, this card is essentially just an auto win if it resolves in most of the cases because it just stops your opponent from playing completely. And even worse, which is also something that it has over the Molcharmies, is you can use it when you go first. So if you make a board and then activate Maxi, your opponent has no way to play into your board because otherwise you're going to draw 20 cards. Honestly, out of all the things that we've seen so far, this is probably among the most bannable cards in a modern Yu-Gi-Oh context. Like, unironically, and I don't mean to over-exaggerate when I say this, but Maxi is like a card that I would rather have Maxi banned than like Magical Scientist. Because at the end of the day, Magical Scientist is a broken card that should never come back. But Magical Scientist, at the end of the day, if people use it, it would just be some gimmicky auto win going first strategy, which we have plenty of. Like that's I wouldn't like it, but it'd be whatever. And Max C, however, has so much impact on Yu-Gi-Oh games these days, especially even at one. There's so many games that are ruined by this card in Master Duel. It's crazy. I would take like a random FTK tool 10 times over having Max C in the game. This is probably the most bannable or ban-worthy card we've looked at so far, almost. And I have zero understanding for why this card is still legal in Master Duel. It's completely crazy. So yeah, goes without saying, never bring it back. Never bring it back, of course. Mind Master. Pay 800 life points and tribute a psychic type monster except Might Master to special summon a level 4 or lower psychic type from your deck in face up attack position. So this card is weird to me because even as someone who's played all the time basically since this card has been printed, essentially I don't remember people really using this card between the time it was printed and then when it was banned. I didn't really see people use it. It was banned a long time ago, like a long time ago it was banned. I think it was banned because they also banned Substitute. Was that at the same time? Because this card does kind of remind me of Substitute in a way, because it's just like instead of cycling through frogs, you're cycling through psychic types. I know that FTKs existed with it. I think the reason it was banned was because there was a time, imagine, kids, listen, there was a time where they preemptively banned FTKs, even if they were very niche. Like back in my day, when you would hear about like a super gimmicky FTK on the internet, or some random loop where everyone knew that it wasn't meta viable, like everyone knew like, okay, this exists, it's annoying if you go up against it, but no one's really going to do well with it in tournaments. Those sort of things, they would ban them, right? There's a couple of cards on this list that are on here just because they could FTK, not because they actually were good or successful. Which might be weird from a modern perspective because, you know, nowadays we've come from that to they're just out here making decks that are made to FTK, like Gimmick Puppet, right? Like they don't seem to care about this at all anymore. But there used to be a time where everyone agreed that FTKing is not a good thing in Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Like I don't know, the way when I'm talking about it, it just makes me mad about Gimmick Puppet because like the idea behind that deck is just so outrageous. But yeah. I think that's why Mind Master is banned, because there was some potential ways to FTK with it. Nowadays, even Substitute is back, right? So I think this card could probably come back. But without a doubt, this card can do some really crazy stuff because it summons any psychic. So, like, it's a non-once per turn Lone Fire Blossom for psychics, and the effects are not negated, so you can just cycle through all of these effects, right? You're going to be paying a lot of life points in the process, but like, let's just say you're playing a punk deck. You can teleport for Might Master, then tribute another psychic, summon Zeamin, search with Zeamin, then tribute the Zeamin, summon another one that searches, and then use that effect and stuff like that. Like, there would be decks that would play this card, I think. But I don't think it would be a problem. Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis is a card that says if it's destroyed, inflict 800, and during the end phase, remove a plant and summon it, which is not once per turn. So this card is banned because of an FTK pairing with, I believe it's Topologic Bomber Dragon, and then you need 10 plants in the grave, right? Because you just bring it back, Bomber destroys it, 800 damage, banish another plant, bring it back, Bomber Dragon destroys it, and so on and so forth. So there was I think there was an FTK around this. I don't know exactly when it was banned, but it was that combo between Bomber Dragon and Amaryllis that ended up getting the card banned. Once again, it is one of the more gimmicky FTKs because you do need 10 plant monsters in the grave. But I mean, still good riddance. Right? Who really cares that card's gone? The cool card in Edison, though. Ronin Toadin. All right, this is still one of the biggest hate crimes in the history of the frog archetype. Because there was at some point there was a moment where they decided to bring back Substitoad and in exchange ban Ronin Toadin. Because of course Ronin Toadin and Substitoad together are a problem, because Substitoad lets you cycle through all of your frogs, which makes Ronin Toadin infinite bodies pretty much. Or I mean, not infinite, but as many frogs as you have, right? So Ronin Toadin is a lot of bodies because it's not once per turn to bring it back. However, this is still like the most outrageous thing they've done. Because can we trade back Ronin Toadin for Substitoad? Because Substitoad is not a good card without Ronin Toadin, and like frogs are basically dead without Ronin Toadin. So they did that because of Sprite. Basically, I think their thought process was not, we want to bring back Substitoad, so we're gonna ban Ronin Toadin in exchange. I think the thought process was, we want to ban Ronin Toadin because of Sprite, so let's bring back Substitoad because it doesn't matter, right? I think that's the logic behind it. But I mean, frogs and Sprite, like, that's 4 years ago at this point. And the card is also legal in Master Duel, and no one's even playing frogs. Like, not even in Paleo, I'm playing the frogs anymore, even with Ronin Toadin. So I think Ronin Toadin should come back. Spiral Master Plan. I know what you're gonna say. This card is, I think, legal in Master Duel, and Spiral is not doing anything, to which I say, good. I don't want Spiral Master Plan back. I think this card is in a category of cards that essentially the way I look at Spiral Master Plan is like, whenever someone makes the argument of, hey, this card could come back because this other card is legal, right? They look at Spiral and the play style of Spiral, and they say like, hey, Spiral is just another combo deck that auto wins the game on turn 1. Why should Spiral be banned when K9 Crystron is legal, right? So bring back Spiral Master Plan. And what I say to that is, no, don't bring back Spiral. But you are right. It doesn't make sense that Spiral is banned and Crystron K9 is legal. But the answer is, get rid of Crystron K9. We need to get rid of some of the crazy combo decks that auto win the game on turn 1. And adding another one into the mix is not going to do the game any good. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already struggling with the fact that some decks are way too strong going first. And so, yes, there's a chance you bring back Spiral Master Plan and nothing changes. But I believe that if you bring back a card and then you have to close your eyes and pray that it's not played, is not good. Like, if the ideal scenario for a card is to come back and not see play, I know I'm a certified combo hater, and I am a combo hater. I admit that, but I think I'm not alone with that. I would not like to play against Spiral again. The Tyrant Neptune cannot be special. You can tribute this card by tributing a monster. This card gains the total of the original attack tributed for it. When this card distributes summon target and effect monster in your gift to distribute it, this card's name becomes that target's name, and this card gains that target's effect. I think this card is banned, if I remember correctly, because of a random FTK where you would copy the Lyrilusk fusion monster with it. There was like a it was Lyrilusk Nightingale, right? And Lyrilusk Nightingale is a level 1 fusion monster that inflicts damage times 500, like its level, right? And so you would like copy it with this, it'd be level 10, so it would do 5,000 damage. And then you would also copy it with another card again and then do more damage with that. Obviously, never was competitively viable. Well, Nightingale itself, there was FTKs with it, but I think the Tyrant Neptune got banned preemptively even. So, yeah. But, I mean, this card itself is probably not the problem. I don't even know. They probably searched it with like King of the Pharaoh Limbs, right? Because it's a reptile or something. Just ban Nightingale. Yeah, this is like the kind of thing where bringing this card back doesn't benefit anyone because the card isn't good anyways, right? This is one of the least interesting banned cards because, like I said earlier, when we talk about cards like Fairy Tale Snow or Eclipse Wyvern or something, I think those cards are interesting to think about, but this card isn't, right? This card is just like, you know, it's not going to see play unless it's an FTK, and the FTK is probably not viable. So ultimately, it's like, do you want it banned just to stay safe, or can it come back because it's gimmicky anyways? I don't care, but it's not interesting either way, right? Tyrant Neptune is not an interesting Yu-Gi-Oh card. Victory Dragon. Victory Dragon is a fun one. This is the only legal, or not legal because it's banned, but the only actual TCG printing of a card that says, if this card attacks your opponent directly and reduces their life points to 0, you win the match. As in, you win the best of 3. Like, if you attack with this for a game in best of 1, you would win the match. Fun fact, this is also the effect on every single World Championship prize card. But all of the World Championship prize cards are not banned because they're not legal to play to begin with. So that's what I meant with, like, this is the first technically legal, or the only technically legal card with this effect. This card is obviously ass. You have to tribute 3 dragons to summon it. It can't be specialed, and it would not see any play. The problem with this card is that it fundamentally messes with the rules of the game, because in a scenario like in Yu-Gi-Oh, you can surrender at any time. So in a world, even in a hypothetical scenario, you can see how much of a headache this would be for judges if, like, someone summons Victory Dragon in game 1, and right before they attack for game, the opponent just surrenders. And that just creates so much tension between players and stuff. Like, I mean, I think the card is technically legal in Genesis format, and obviously no one is doing it. So the problem is it's only a problem in their heads, basically. Like, it doesn't actually exist because the card is bad. But it's just, I think for good measure, it's banned. But honestly, I think they could just bring it back because no one would care. No one would care because everyone knows that you can just surrender, which just makes the card bad. But who cares? Then the card is bad. Who cares? The card is bad because everyone can scoop at any time. Because that's legal, right? It's legal to just surrender. Why would it not be allowed to just scoop the game? As a result of that, no one would play the card, right? No one would play the card for that reason. So I think they could bring it back, no problem. All right, and that's all the effect monsters. And now we're getting into the really fun stuff. Now we're getting into the extra deck. Okay, hold up. Elder Entity Norden. Elder Entity Norden is a Synchro or XYZ plus a Synchro or XYZ. When this card is special, you can target a level 4 or lower monster in your grave, special summon it, but its effects are negated, banish it when it leaves the field. This card has been abused in a multitude of ways, but the most obvious one was Instant Fusion. It was a really good Instant Fusion target because it was 2 bodies in 1 from Instant Fusion. I will say, from a modern perspective, that would not even be that crazy if Instant Fusion was like 2 bodies, right? We have other powerful spell cards that give you multiple bodies. It would probably be okay. Another thing that this card did was in Zodiac early days, you could just combine 2 Exceed monsters to make this with Fusion Substitute, and then you would get 2 level 4s back onto the field, and you would rinse and repeat and do this a couple of times. So there was a couple of loops with Norden and Fusion Sub, because Fusion Sub would also put the Norden back into the deck, and so on and so forth. Norden, I am not sure. What do you think people would do with Norden nowadays? Like, would people play like a 1 of Instant Fusion for this? I'm not sure. It is a really good Super Poly target against certain decks. You know, you could Super Poly 2 Synchros or 2 Exceeds, or 1 Synchro, 1 Exceed. That would be really strong. I think it would be. I think honestly that's what it would be for the most part. I don't know if there's any other crazy combos that people would be doing with Norden. But it would definitely be a solid Super Poly target. Which, I guess the question is that okay, maybe? Would it be okay as a random Super Poly target? I think maybe it could be. compared to some of the other extra deck monsters that we're about to look at, I think this card is one of the more unbannable ones. I could see it. Yeah. Okay. Supreme King Starving Venom is the counterpart to Tyrant Neptune, because it also says you can target another monster on field or grave until the end phase. This card's name becomes that name and replace the effect. So this was another way to target. This was actually meta viable. There was a meta deck in, I believe, 2018. There was a YCS in Europe, I remember, where people played Pendulum FTK. It was a meta deck. It didn't win the tournament, but there was a bunch of people playing it and a bunch of people worried about it. Where the plan was basically you would put the I don't remember how you got the Nightingale into the graveyard. I think it could search instant fusion. I think it could search instant fusion, then you would instant fusion into the Nightingale, and then you would summon the Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom twice. And because it's level 8, you copy the Nightingale, you burn for 4,000, and you do that twice. So because this card, as opposed to the Tyrant Neptune, this card was much easier to summon, also not once per turn, and because it's in the extra deck, you could always access 2 of it. And so it's just a very easy way to FTK with Nightingale. So yeah. Once again, it's a similar situation as with the Artifact, Mjolnir, and Imperial Princess or Sanctifier. Like, is the problem the card that burns, or is the problem the card that copies another card's effect? They've chosen to ban the cards that copy, which works. It got rid of the problem, which is fine. But yeah, they could also go the other. Like this card, if it doesn't copy Nightingale, it's probably okay. But I can see the argument that like copy effects are problematic, maybe. But maybe the problem is Nightingale. Maybe they should just get rid of Nightingale and bring back Starving Venom. Either way, I don't... Yeah. As long as one of them is banned, is okay. Alright, Tearlaman's Kick Kalos. Dude, we're going into the territory of cards that people actually... Like, some people want back Tearlaman's Kick Kalos. I don't know. Here's my take on Tearlaments. And I actually don't hate Tearlaments, but I still don't want Kid Kalos back. I actually am a fan of Tearlaments format. The only thing that I'm not a fan of is the current iteration of Tearlaments that's being played in Master Duel, because Master Duel does have Tearlaments Kick Kalos. And here's the thing, I have no problem. I actually liked full power Tearlament format. But I think it was good while it lasted. Of course, eventually they had to get rid of Tearlaments because it was way too strong. But it was an enjoyable format, but I'm still happy it's over. You know, I'm still happy it ended eventually, because I don't want to play the same format forever, right? So them getting rid of Tearlaments eventually was fine. What I don't like is the freaking gambling addict version of Tearlaments that people are playing in Master Duel, where basically Tearlament isn't dead, but the way it's being played is also, in my opinion, not very enjoyable. I know people will disagree on this, and that's fine. Some people really enjoy playing the more gambling version of Tearlaments, because quite frankly, Ishizu Tearlaments, of course, also had milling involved, but Ishizu Tearlaments was so consistent and had so many good milling hits that it wasn't really luck if you hit with it. It was consistent at that. Whereas the current version of Tearlaments in Master Duel is it just feels like gambling, quite frankly. It's just literally, sometimes your opponent goes Kid Kalos mill 5 and they go +5 off of it, and sometimes they hit literally nothing. And that's not, in my opinion, it's not very fun. It's okay to disagree on that. I personally like that Tearlament Kick Kalos is unbanned. If anything, if they want Tearlaments to be back, I would like it to be back at full power, which is never going to happen. But I would rather play in a format with full power tier than like this half-ass gambling Tearlaments that they have in Master Duel, personally. So that's how I feel about Tearlaments. All right, Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess. This is going to be the coldest take in all of this, probably. This card should have never been made. In general, in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, they have to stop making cards that negate hand traps. This card is completely toxic and lets every single combo deck on the planet ignore all of the hand traps. So this card can never come back unless the game fundamentally changes. Unless maybe if the game in 10 years is completely different than what we have right now, this card could come back. But the way how modern Yu-Gi-Oh works, cards that negate hand traps are the most toxic thing that they can do, especially if they're in the extra deck. Which is also why I'm praying every day that they eventually ban K9 Ripper. But in general, just for the love of God, stop making cards that negate hand traps. That it's not. And also, like, the thing is, like, even if your opponent doesn't have a hand trap, this card is a phenomenal end board piece, right? So, yeah. Christian Halk Fibrax is 2 monsters including a tuner, and then summons a tuner from your deck, which was a really good card. Funnily enough, I think this card is still really good. This card is still really good, and I don't want it to come back, but it's less broken than, for example, Appaloosa was or is. I think we are at a point with the game where, like, because they got rid of some of the more generic extra deck pieces in TCG. I'm talking in TCG, right? Where we don't have Baron, we don't have Appaloosa. Some of the most outrageous things, and also Auroradon, right? Some of the most outrageous things that people did with Halka Fibrax, you cannot do anymore. So it's not the craziest card, or Savage Dragon. Yes, Savage Dragon is another great example. So there's a couple of cards that are banned now that would have made Halka Fibrax even more problematic, or did make Halka Fibrax more problematic. I think Halka Fibrax wouldn't be the craziest thing to come back, but it's also not something I want necessarily, right? Zaylin is a thing. It does tag out into Zaylin, which is really strong. So essentially, I think the way this card would see play is different than what it was, because when this card saw play, it was mostly used for link slop, right? Even though it summons a tuner, a lot of the time it was used for link combos. You would actually, you know, but nowadays I feel like it would be better to actually play it in like synchro decks, right? You would just summon it, get a tuner from the deck, and then tag out into Zaylin on the opponent's turn, which is different than what it was when it was played and legal, but it still is really powerful, right? So I think it's better if it stays banned. Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion, 3 months. Dude, it's crazy. So many of these cards that we're looking at right now, or about to look at, are actually just legal in Master Duel, and it blows my mind every time I'm reminded of it. Curious is one of those cards. So Curious requires 3 monsters with the same attribute but different types, and it lets you send any card from your deck to the graveyard. And quite frankly, this is different than cards like Floodgates or whatever that we've talked about, where I feel like most people intuitively understand why a card that says your opponent cannot play the game is toxic, right? It's a little bit less intuitive to understand why cards like Curious are a massive problem in Yu-Gi-Oh! But essentially, this card, you might think like, oh, 3 monsters with the same attribute but different types. That seems like a very reasonable investment, like a pretty hefty cost to summon a card like this. But that's exactly the thing, right? If you're not sending something completely busted with Curious, it's just not worth making, right? So as a result, what happens is, if this card is legal, people will just not use it for months, and then one thing is discovered that you can completely win the game off of, and then people start using the card again, right? Like someone discovers a random combo where you can send something really broken with Curious, and all of a sudden it's worth investing those 3 monsters into it because it auto wins you the game, right? So essentially, cards that are hard to summon but have a really high payoff are problematic in that way, because people are only going to do it if it's worth it, and that means people are only going to do it if it auto wins you the game, right? So this card was played as like a crazy combo enabler in like tier elements. It was one of the most consistent ways to get Fairy Tail Snow. We talked about that earlier, right? Like in tier elements, even before Ishizu, there was a version of tier elements with Curious and Fairy Tail Snow where you would just mill a bunch of cards on turn 1, and if you didn't hit the Snow, well, I'll go Curious and send Snow, and then I have Snow with 25 cards in the graveyard. And of course, in that instance, you might say snow is the problem, which is reasonable. But the thing with Curious, it's a recurring theme that every time Curious pops up, it does something really crazy. There's always going to be crazy targets for it, right? Like people did send anti-spell and then reset it with Griffin is a good point, right? Like it can even send spell traps and then you can get them back. Of course, Nightmare Griffin is banned now, but still the point remains, right? Like there's always something crazy to be done with Curious. Guard Dragon Agarpain. Link 2 dragons. You cannot special accept dragons. During your main phase, you can special 1 dragon monster from your extra deck to an extra monster zone or main monster zone you can summon to that 2 or more link monsters point to. You can only use it once per turn. This is going to be a recurring theme for a lot of these banned, mostly link monsters, but a lot of others as well. If there is a extra deck monster that is somewhat generic, of course this card you can't make it with any bodies, but it's 2 dragons, relatively generic. Extra deck monsters that summon or cheat out other cards from your main deck or extra deck are incredibly problematic in Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably because essentially floodgates are one of the most toxic aspects of the game, but tutoring from main or extra deck on an extra deck monster is probably the most problematic thing when it comes to combo decks. Like, essentially, there's two parts to a combo deck. There's cards that are your end board, and then there's cards that like facilitate you getting there. And Agarpain is one of the strongest like cards that facilitate combo decks because it just tutors out a monster from the extra deck. Completely insane card in 2019 in all of the Dragon Link predecessors, basically, that tutored out all kinds of shit from your extra deck. Really broke. So extra deck monsters that tutor out other extra deck monsters are just not it. Guard Dragon LP is the counterpart. Honestly, I don't even know which of the two is more broken. But LP might be more broken just because it's a Link 1, so it's easier to make. But during your main phase, you special summon a dragon from your deck or hand to a zone that 2 Link monsters point to, which is completely insane. This card, once again, having access to any random one of in your deck just from your extra deck with any dragon, completely busted. Whether it's summoning Eclipse Wyvern or summoning Omni Dragon Brotor, or these days you could summon rockets with it. Those didn't exist back then. This card is completely insane. This card is completely insane, and honestly, both LP and Guard Dragon Agarpain, I have no idea how they ever reached the conclusion that those were even printable cards. But as a result, of course, Guard Dragon, like Danger, Thunder, Guard Dragon was probably the best deck in 2019. And so, yeah. Please check the new Chaos Origin card just revealed. We'll do it after. All right, give it to me. Tell me you guys think Electromite should come back, and I'll tell you the same thing as I did with what was the other one we just talked about, where I said the same thing, like Spiral Master Plan or whatever. Like, please, we don't need more combo slop in the game. This playstyle, the playstyle that this card facilitates is toxic as hell. I rarely, and I really mean it, I rarely have less fun in Master Duel than when I play against Pendulum Slop. That deck is probably, even if it's not meta, even if it's not commonly played in Master Duel, is probably one of the most miserable experiences that you can have when you're playing the game. All right, and this card is from an era where Yu-Gi-Oh was heavily trending in that direction. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if the game became that, like if the game was like that, like what it was in, I don't know, 2021, 2022, whatever, if it was that forever, I would eventually stop playing the game. Like, these kind of decks are not welcome in the game. And I know I know, once again, we have other decks like that are legal, but in my opinion, those should also be banned. I think the solution is never to bring back Electromite. This card, unfortunately, with how Pendulum has developed, it should never come back. It should never come back. And exact same thing here. Exact same thing for Isold. And I know you're saying like, oh, but these cards are legal in Master Duel and they're not even the best decks. No, they aren't. But every time I'm playing against these decks, I'm having a miserable time. So I'm asking the question of like, why would you want those cards to exist? I understand that playing these decks yourself is fun. All right. Like I understand this. Don't think I don't get it. I understand that playing these combo decks is fun. But at the end of the day, what you have to understand is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a two-player game, and watching someone play a deck like Noble Knights or Pendulums when you're going second is the opposite of fun. And it's not a two-player game. It's not even trying to be a two-player game. So none of these cards are healthy for Yu-Gi-Oh! None of them. Nightmare Goblin, on the other hand, in my opinion, could come back. This card was very strong in 2018. It does give you a second normal summon, but it does require a lot of work to get that. I think this card will be fine. I was scared actually when this card came back in Master Duel. I think I remember reacting to them unbanning Nightmare Goblin in Master Duel, and I was skeptical of it. But I do think, even though it's not like my favorite card ever, I don't really care. If it stays banned, it stays banned. I don't really mind. But I think this card could genuinely be unbanned. I wouldn't be too mad about it. On the other hand, we have Nightmare Griffin, which is a floodgate because it says special summon monsters on the field cannot activate their effects unless they're linked, which is not healthy. So floodgates, stay banned, please, forever. That's all I have to say about Nightmare Griffin. It's funny because even the other effect for Nightmare Griffin has been used for bad in the past, where you recycle spell traps from your grave, but people would like send like a toxic trap from their deck to the grave with like Beatrice or Curious and then set it. That was also a problem. But for the most part, it's the floodgate part. That, I mean, both of them are floodgates, right? You either floodgate by recycling a floodgate, or you floodgate with its own effect, or both. So yeah, Nightmare Griffin, not a good idea. Nightmare Mermaid. Nightmare Mermaid is an interesting topic because this card is essentially Moon of the Closed Heaven, but for Orchest instead of Fiendsmith, right? Which I don't really have a huge problem with Orchest. I do think Orchest is a little bit different than Fiendsmith because in like Fiendsmith, essentially, the way I'm trying to describe it is like Fiendsmith goes into like every combo deck, right? But if Mermaid came back, then I feel like it doesn't make Orchest go into every other deck. It just means that the Orchest decks have some more starters, which wouldn't be the end of the world because Orchest, like Orchest compared to like Fiendsmith, has like proper locks that make it harder to splash because you are locked into darks for the rest of the turn. Of course, if you bring back Mermaid, you would have to ban Ibli everywhere. I don't know. Ibli is banned somewhere, but I don't know exactly. It's not banned in TCG, so you'd have to bring back Ibli 100%. You'd have to ban Ibli if you want to bring back Nightmare Mermaid. I personally, I'm not against Nightmare Mermaid for a little Orchest boost. I think it's nice because Orchest is struggling with consistency a little bit. So being able to use like the striker cards as a way to get into your Orchest engine and stuff like that, I think is neat, I suppose. But I'm also not like, I'm not in desperate need for it either. Like I think if they want to keep it banned, I'm fine with that. I feel like also it'd be weird to bring it back now because like Orchest, like if they wanted it to have Mermaid, then they would have done it last year, I think. So yeah, I'm kind of indifferent on Mermaid. It's not the kind of card that I'm like they should bring it back for sure, but I'm not saying I don't think they should never bring it back. So I'm like somewhere in the middle. My biggest, honestly, it's funny because the way my view of the game has changed so much in the last like 1 or 2 years. Honestly, the cards that I'm most annoyed by in Orchest are genuinely like Crescendo, because I don't know, it's something that I've gotten more determined on recently, but I just like I just despise when people just negate starters, because I just want to play the game, man. So like I would trade Nightmare Mermaid for Orchest Crescendo in a heartbeat. They can combo consistently if they don't end on an Omni Negate. I'd be down. So my friend Link Decoder. Yeah, I mean link climbing is not good. So that's all I have to say. I don't think they should bring back Link Decoder because this is not very healthy card design. You should not. Here's the thing with Link monsters, right? Here's the thing with Link monsters and Link climbing. We've talked about this in the past, but I feel like if you make cards like this, you completely ruin the design of Link monsters, I feel like, because the design idea behind Link monsters is fine, right? Like a Link 2 requires 2 monsters, and a Link 3 requires 3 monsters, so the Link 3 is more powerful than the Link 2, right? And the Link 4 requires 4, so it's more powerful than the Link 3, right? That's how it makes sense. That's how you can, as a card designer, that's how you can make things work. That's how it. But when you make the Link 1 that is 2 bodies, and then the Link 2 that is 3 bodies, and the Link 3 that is 4 bodies, it all just, you throw it all out of the window. All of a sudden, the Link 1 equals 5. And I'm not gonna rant about that any longer. We've been through this. Dude, Link Cross. Okay. So you guys are gonna help me a little bit on this, because I didn't play that much during COVID. I kept up with the game a little bit. I know this card existed. If this card is Link summoned, you can activate this effect, special summon a number of Link tokens up to the Link rating of the monster used for this card's Link summon. Also, you cannot use the Link tokens as Link material for the rest of this turn. What is so broken about this card? So you use a Link 2 monster for Link Cross, and you get a Link 1 and 2 tokens out of it, but you can't use the tokens as Link material. Now, enlighten me. I know this is Yummy combo, okay? This is Yummy combo, but this card was banned, obviously, way before Yummy. Hulk and Verte? Yeah, but like, you can't use the tokens to make those cards, right? It was Hulk Slop? Oh, okay, so was the play pattern was Hulk of Fibrax gives you a tuner, then you Link Cross, you turn the Hulk into a Link Cross, and that gives you the non-tuners. Is that the idea? Yes, okay. Now, in a world, let me ask this question. In a world without Halka Fibrax, what is the crazy use for Link Cross? What's like the what's the idea? What do we do outside of Yummy? Okay, I understand we're doing Yummy combo. It's been said like 20 times. But in a world where let's say they handle Yummy properly on a ban list in the future, I guess I do see how there's just a lot of potential here, right? Like, it's just the potential to turn any Link monster into tokens. I can't think of an immediate use case outside of Yummy, but there probably is some crazy shit you can do. Yeah, and the thing is, like, this is the kind of card, like, I'd rather not find out what people can do with it. I think I'm okay. This will always be a time bomb. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Malice Q Whitebinder. I mean, yeah, no, this cannot come back. We just got rid of it. We just got rid of it, and Malice is still good. So Yeah, I don't think we have to talk about just a recent ban today. I mean, of course, it was a good ban. And Malice does feel a lot more manageable now. Now the strongest thing about the deck is its non-engine. The engine itself is actually just fine, I think. But yeah, good riddance on Whitebinder. Oh, dude, the link section, it tells you a lot about, like, if you just compare the size of the sections, links are the newest mechanic out of this list and still have by far the most banned cards. It's crazy. Mecha Phantom Beast Aurora Dawn. It's sometimes I read Yu-Gi-Oh cards and I really wonder who thought that was a good idea. If this card's link summoned, special summon 3 tokens, and you also tutor out a Mecha Phantom Beast tuner with it from your deck. Yeah, it's hard to summon without Halqifibrax. But still, I don't want it. I don't want it. This is fine without Halqifibrax. I think once again, you think this is fine just because we have other broken combo slop in the game right now. Like, genuinely, I believe if you want this card to come back, I think you've given up on the game ever becoming more balanced, which I think is reasonable. If that's your opinion, that's fine. You know, if you think like, oh, it's beyond repair, all the crazy combos are in the game already, whatever, bring Aurora Dawn back. I think that's a legit opinion to have. I personally am not in that camp though. I'm still in the camp of, I believe we can fix this going first combo slop problem that Yu-Gi-Oh definitely has. And I think the solution can never be just release the other shit, because what we have right now is already more broken than that, right? That's just not something I personally believe in. I think we need to get away from this kind of stuff. Aurora Dawn is completely fine in Master Duel and OCG. It's not. Here's the thing. It's not. What you're saying is not true. The only reason it's not seeing play is because we have other more broken things that are also a problem and should be banned. And if those cards get banned and Aurora Dawn was legal, then it would just be like the next thing that people spam. But the play pattern that these cards provide is not fine. It genuinely is not fine. There's no value that this card provides to Yu-Gi-Oh other than auto win on turn 1. And that is the same for all these other cards. It's the same for Electromite, Isold, whatever. All the cards we've talked about. Just because there's something else that does it even better does not mean that these cards are okay. At least not in my perspective. I think that's not how it works. Moon of the Closed Heaven is one of the first, is it the first thing that the first bridge that we're talking about? Okay, bridging, I guess bridging is a more, I mean, it's not a new concept, but it's something that's gotten so relevant recently. My personal opinion, and I've said this a ton in recent discussions, is that a lot of modern Yu-Gi-Oh archetypes are fine. A lot of even some of the archetypes that I've had problems with in the past, like Yami Mitsurugi or whatever, a lot of the modern Yu-Gi-Oh archetypes are actually designed quite well. When I look at them and when they're played in their pure form, I think a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh decks these days are fine. Not all of them, but I think one of the bigger problems of modern Yu-Gi-Oh is this kind of like slopification of decks where you can just play multiple decks together and you just achieve more than the sum of its parts. And Moon of the Closed Heaven was one of the most outrageous examples of this, but there are others. Like, for example, when people start bridging a Yami deck into a Mitsurugi deck, or when people start bridging a Yu-Bell deck into a Fiendsmith combo, something like that, you know, like that's one of the things with Moon. That's when decks become too broken and powerful going first, right? And Moon of the Closed Heaven is a prime example of this because, and I will die on this hill, the Fiendsmith cards are fine. The Fiendsmith cards themselves are fine, and if you've ever played pure Fiendsmith or Fiendsmith Control or whatever, you would probably agree with me that that deck is nothing too crazy and completely okay. The problem is that when Moon was around, every single deck could make a Caesar or whatever on top of everything. Fiendsmith as a whole, in my opinion, was not fine, because Fiendsmith Snake Eye, Fiendsmith Yubel, Fiendsmith Unchained, Fiendsmith, you name it. Even nowadays, we still have it. Fiendsmith Yami, Fiendsmith Magnet Warriors, because who would have guessed after Moon, there's still other bridges, you know? So I think that's Fiendsmith Mitsurugi. Like, there's Fiendsmith Orchis. There's so many slopified versions of Fiendsmith. That's the thing. It genuinely makes me sad, because I'm a fan of the Fiendsmith cards. I like the grind game. I like the idea, because it's funny because Fiendsmith itself makes very small boards. But then when you splash Fiendsmith into something else, it makes huge boards, which is very polarizing, you know? Like, I 100% I understand everyone who hates Fiendsmith for this. I think it's completely reasonable. I think it's completely reasonable if you hate Fiendsmith because of what kind of slop it provides for all these decks. I think that's fine. I can't even argue with it, you know? I cannot argue with people who hate Fiendsmith for that reason. But it just showcases a fundamental problem, I suppose, with card design, where the archetype itself is fine, but the problem is that people are playing 5 archetypes in one deck, which is not how it's supposed to be. So a lot of these bridges should be, you know, banned. In the case of Fiendsmith, I don't even know if there's a solution. It's outside of banning Requiem, which would be unfortunate because then they're killing Fiendsmith essentially, but maybe it has to be done. But I don't know. Moon shouldn't come back unless Fiendsmith is gone, of course. All right. Prank Hits Meow Meow Moo. This is a card that, in my opinion, could come back with no problem. Once again, I think Prank Hits suffers a similar problem than some of these other decks, and something that we've just talked about. I think Prank Hits as a deck, completely fine. No one cares. Because here's the thing, right? Prank Hits, you might ask, why is this card banned? This card is banned because it did something. Maybe it was even one of the first of its kind. I'm not entirely sure, but like, Prank Hits to me is one of like the OG one card combo decks, right? Like, it was like one of those where all of a sudden you had this concept, which, believe it or not, it didn't really exist previously super often, where like the entire idea of the deck was just like, you play a bunch of these little Prank Hits, and every one of them is just your starter for your combo, right? And then you would just do whatever was the best slop thing to do at the time, right? Like, whether it was some random combo including Verte and DPE at some point, or you would do like Hulk, Auroradon, random shit, I don't know. Like, you would just normal summon one of the Prank Hits and it'll do your thing, right? Because it just gets you a lot of bodies, right? And so this is something that back then was special, because that was not how it used to work all the time. This sort of deck where, yeah, you just play like 20 hand traps, bunch of Prank Hit starters, and some engine requirements, and there you go. That's a deck, right? Nowadays, this is common, right? Nowadays, this is something that a lot of decks do. I'm still not a fan of it, but I've kind of like, I've come to terms with it. Like, I've been complaining about one card combos when they started doing them more often, like with Mathmech Circular and stuff like that. Anyone remember that arc when I complained about one card combos? But eventually I had to give up, because now every single deck gets one card combos, right? And I do acknowledge that one card combos have pros and cons for the game. You know, there's some positives about one card combos. For example, they make decks more consistent. And I like when decks are consistent, because I don't like winning or losing because of a random brick. That's not a great thing. So I think one card combos have some things going for it, as long as the end boards are fair. And with which is not always the case, of course. But essentially, I've moved from complaining about one card combos themselves to, well, if one card combos are going to exist, then at least make sure that the end boards are fine. Which is not really what's always happening right now. But I think Prank Hits, with all of the other cards that we have these days that are one card combos, Prank Hits could come back. Like, you know, if you look at what one Yummy, like Cupsy Yummy normal summon can do, there's no way you can argue that Prankit's Meow Meow Moo needs to stay banned, right? Like if every deck gets to have one card combos these days, why shouldn't Prankits exist? Like that deck is fine compared to all the other stuff, right? And once again, I mean, we're using the same argument of like, oh, these other things exist, so we could bring this back. But in the case of one card combos, I think it's a little bit different because one card combos, for now, they're just not gonna go away. They're simply not gonna go away. Whereas with combo decks, I have a hope that they might tone it down a little bit, even though it might be unrealistic, it might be copium, but okay. Predaplant Verte Anaconda. You might be surprised by this, but I don't mind this card actually. I think this card, even when it got banned, arguably wasn't that crazy. Like, unironically, this is one of the worst end board pieces you can think of, I suppose, when it comes to like two monsters. Because if you're trying to summon like DPE with it, you need main deck bricks for it. It's a good card in branded Draco Tail, don't get me wrong, but like it's not the problem with branded Draco Tail, I don't think. I wouldn't care if they brought back Verte. I don't think they will necessarily, and I'm also not sad if they don't. I don't really miss Verte, but I don't think it's the problem. Yeah. It's sort of like better Typhon. I don't really know why it would compare to Typhon, but like, no, I mean, realistically, right? If the only problematic use case for Verte that you can think of is send branded fusion, then maybe we have to talk about branded fusion being the problem in this equation. Instant fusion is legal? Who cares? I don't think I've ever seen someone send instant fusion with Verte Anaconda. What kind of move is that? You're gonna lock yourself out of special summoning for the rest of the turn to send instant fusion? DP or something? Okay, trust me when I say this right now. No one, literally no one, is gonna play Verte with DPE in 2026. If they bring this card back tomorrow, no one is doing that. I'm not putting Fusion Destiny and 2 D Hero bricks in my extra deck for DPE in 2026. I will not do that. This is what I mean, right? This card is good, don't get me wrong, but this card, like the standard for an end board piece and for an extra deck monster have risen so much in the 5 years since the 6 years since this card has been printed that you simply wouldn't see it in many decks. There are, and this is the thing, right? This is why it's interesting, is because there are some use cases for this card. I'm not saying it would be bad in all of the cases. Like, yeah, Verte sees play in Master Duel right now in branded Draco Tail. Verte also has a room in like Memento to send Memento Fusion in a pinch. That can happen. Right? The card sees some play, but that's why it's interesting. I think that's why you can make an argument to bring it back, because there are some decks who benefit from it, right? Because the most boring thing you can do is bring a card back when it's already too late and no one can use it anymore because it's so bad, which is probably what would happen with something like Meow Meow Moo, right? Meow Meow Moo would come back and no one would play it. Verte would come back and some people actually would, but it wouldn't be a problem. And I think that's the cards that are worth bringing back. I'm not saying it's a bad card, because that would be over exaggerating. We don't need to boost Draco Tail even more though. I mean, the next ban list is going to hit Draco Tail anyways, right? That's the thing, right? By the time, in the hypothetical scenario where they would bring back Verte, Draco Tail would obviously receive a hit. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand we don't need to buff Draco Tail right now. That's not my approach. My approach is like the Verte is fine, but if they're gonna like hit branded Draco Tail, then Verte could come back 100%. They should just ban Branded Fusion and unban Verte. I think that's a little harsh. I don't think they want to kill Branded like that, but I personally wouldn't mind that. Okay. Samorg, Bird of Sovereignty. This card is a Link 3 that can't be used as Link material, which is a healthy lock, and during your end phase, it summons a Winged Beast equal to the number of open spell trap zones. The most toxic thing about this card is probably that it gives targeting protection. But I think without the Wind Barrier statue, this card is completely fine. Essentially, what this card would do is it would summon Mist Valley Apex Avian, probably, which isn't interesting, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of summoning an Omni Negate in the end phase. I wouldn't really like it, but I think it's hard to argue that this card should stay banned right now. I think without the barrier statue, it's fine. Crocea. I've been playing this card in Master Duel in my Radiant Typhoon deck, and generally it just doesn't come up because it needs a Winged Beast, and the only Winged Beast is Crocea. So if I already have Crocea, then making this doesn't matter. And if I don't have Crocea, I can't make this card unless I draw Fuwa. I've summoned this card with normal summon Fuwa like twice, but that's it. Literally, that's it. So and it's very underwhelming. Like when I put this card into the deck, I was like, it almost felt like, you know, oh, I can play this crazy card that's banned in TCG. It's going to be insane. And then it never happened. It's just not that crazy anymore. Like a Link 3 that can't be used as Link material that summons a monster in the end phase. As long as you're not summoning a Floodgate, the card's fine. Yeah. Just insert the exact same thing that I said when we talked about Link Decoder. So yeah. Okay. I don't know if this one's controversial. I don't think it is, but I guess it's a little bit interesting to talk about these cards that are not banned in Master Duel but are banned in the TCG. This one is weird for me because I'm a huge fan of Sprite. But I think it was a huge mistake to not have Sprite Elf require a Sprite monster. I think it should have been 2 monsters including a Sprite monster, and not 2 monsters including a level rank Link 2. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this card is way too generic. And it's just not used for good in Master Duel ever, right? Like people just use it right now. And here's the thing, right? This card ranges from super gimmicky turn 1 FTK combos to actually being just meta viable in one of the best decks in the format in like Yummy, right? This card does it all. This card sees play in random combos where people Sprite sprint something random to the grave and then bring it back with Sprite Elf. Then there's actual meta usage in like Yummy where you can bring back your synchros with it and everything is now targeting protected and so on and so forth. Like this card is completely insane and unreasonable, unfortunately. Like this card is, as much as I love Sprite, this card is just basically the incarnation of helping these kind of like slop decks if they just need it, right? Because it gives everything grind game, it gives everything targeting protection, and it's just unreasonably good. And so as much, here's the thing, right? I might be very harsh on these kind of like combo pieces and enablers, but at least I'm being consistent, right? Like I as much as I love Sprite, I think it's in the same vein as something like Electromite or Isolt or whatever. Like it's just generic combo slot material that shouldn't exist. Why did Master Duel choose this card to not be banned instead of Toad? Genuinely, if I had to guess why Master Duel hasn't banned this card, I think it's because Sprite is a deck that, at least from my perspective, is something that is very easy to understand for beginners. And so Sprite is a deck that they value to be in the game for that, which also further, I think it's further shown by the fact that they also made Sprite one of the starter decks that you get now for like entering the new player code thingy. So you literally get a Sprite deck to start playing. Because I think, and I can agree with that to an extent, right? I think Sprite is a good deck to learn the game because it's not like super simple. it does have some combos, but then the combos aren't that complicated, right? Like it's a solid way to start playing. It's like there's some action going on, right? You're doing combos, but it's also not rocket science. So it's like, it's a fine deck for people to start learning the game. But unfortunately, if that's the reason to never ban Sprite Elf in Master Duel, then that's going to be problematic. All right, we're almost through with the Link monsters. Just a couple of really broken ones left. Super Heavy Samurai Scarecrow. This, in my opinion, goes down as still one of the best bans in TCG history because they banned it so quickly. So for anyone who's familiar with the timeline, this card came out in the TCG, or rather, they didn't ban it shortly after it came out, but when we got Vakaushi and whatever the other one is called, the big Benkei scale thingy, they were like a common and a super rare, respectively, and they banned Super Heavy Samurai Scarecrow like 2 weeks after, immediately. And Super Heavy Samurai, once again, I can rinse and repeat the same talk over and over and over again, but I don't really want to. The playstyle of that deck is not welcome, in my opinion. The playstyle of that deck is I go first, I make board, I win game. Not interesting. Good riddance. I don't care about it one bit. Alright, Topologic Gumblar Dragon is a card that... Dude, if I didn't play at the time where this card came out, I wouldn't believe this was a real card. Okay, so if another monster is special summoned to a zone a Link monster points to while this card is on the field, discard 1 or 2 random cards, then your opponent discards the same number. The fact that this card existed basically made for a deck that was already super meta at the time to become even more toxic and powerful, which was Goki. Goki was a deck that was doing some heavy combos in 2018-ish, 2017 maybe already, and this card gave the deck a way to hand loop 4 cards out of your opponent's hand. And you're asking, why 4? It says once per turn and it loops 2 cards. Well, you just summon a Linkuriboh on your opponent's turn, like you discard 2 cards on your turn, and then you pass, and then on your opponent's turn, immediately you go Linkuriboh effect, bring it back into a zone a Link monster points to, discard 2 more. So this card essentially reads your opponent discards 4 cards from their hand randomly, which is outrageous. It's outrageous that they made this card, and no, it can never come back. Never can Topologic Gumblar Dragon come. And here's Union Carrier, which is another card in the category of random extra deck monsters that are relatively easy to make and just get you very easy access to a monster from your deck, right? You just equip something to it, and now that monster is in rotation. You can trigger its graveyard effect. You can bring it back from the grave, whatever. If like, look, I don't know what to say, but if you look at this list of extra deck monsters, especially Link monsters that are banned, they almost all of them fall into the category of Floodgate or extra deck monster that summons something from your deck or searches from your deck or sends from deck to graveyard. That's almost all of these cards do this, right? Which is crazy. You could almost think that that is an effect that you have to be incredibly careful when you put them on cards. Almost, right? So, yeah, this is just due to the nature of Link monsters being incredibly easy to make and your extra deck being accessible at all times. Essentially, what that means is the cards in your deck become accessible at all times, which just makes everything super streamlined, and you can do the same crazy combo every time, over and over and over again, right? Which is sometimes problematic in some cases. And Union Carrier just like never used for good, right? You always equip some random Floodgate or some broken shit to this card. So yeah, don't bring Union Carrier back. All right, synchros. There are only 6 synchro monsters that are banned, and 3 of them go into the same category immediately. And I want none of them back, even though this. Funnily enough, all 3 of these are legal in Master Duel, which is just another. If this video has any lesson to it, then that you can realize how much more powerful the Master Duel format is, and how much more power crept it is even in Master Duel. None of these cards should come back because, quite frankly, Omni Negates are not fun Yu-Gi-Oh! Like the game of I summon Omni Negates and I hope that I have more Omni Negates than you have ways to play the game is outdated, it's boring, and no one really likes it. Baron the Fleur, Savage, and even Arclight, they all facilitate that play pattern. With Arclight, of course, it's even more problematic because it searches Habakiri, and it also is a floodgate for certain decks because cards that are sent from the hand to the graveyard or from the deck are banished instead. So this just floodgates random decks out of for no reason. Could they bring back Savage Dragon, and would it immediately be a problem? Maybe not, but does anyone want Savage Dragon back? Not really. Like, it's only combo Andys that want these cards back, and like I don't really care. Like I just don't think this is healthy gameplay at all. Okay, the other cards, the other synchros that are banned, we have Tempest Magician, which is relatively easy to go over because this is just it gains spell counters and for discarding any number of spells, and then you can remove the spell counters to do 500 damage. So this was just an FTK tool that they got rid of eventually. They could bring it back because I don't think, I mean, it would just be once again another random FTK if they brought it back, and I think like it probably wouldn't matter that much, but I also don't think it, you know, needs to be banned. Like, this seems terrible. Oh no, the reason why it's good is because it removes all the spell counters on the field, not just the one that it has. You might read this and you might think, oh, you have to discard like 15 cards to FTK with this. No, you don't. You just like put counters everywhere on like your whatever, your field spell or other cards that collect counters, and then you just summon this and win. So yes, it's just an FTK enabler. So it doesn't provide any value for the game. So it can just stay banned. Then we have Chaos Ruler, which is just honestly, I am not sure if I think Chaos Ruler is more powerful than Zombie Vampire. Which doesn't necessarily mean I want Chaos Ruler back, but it just goes to show how much I want Zombie Vampire to go. Like, I am so tired of every random Horus engine or Mitsurugi starter to just bridge into whatever they want. I just can't really stand it anymore, so I hope Zombie Vampire gets banned. But now I'm just thinking about, like, Chaos Ruler, I'm happy it's banned, but I think it's less powerful than Zombie Vampire. Unironically, I think Chaos Ruler is less powerful than Zombie Vampire because it doesn't summon the monster. And I do think right now it's easier to summon a rank 8 because of Mitsurugi. But I mean, this card is obviously problematic. It's random, so it doesn't always work. But just once again, it's another extra deck card that gives you access to the cards from your main deck, right? And then we have Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity, which when this card is synchro summoned, for the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects on the field. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. Never bring this card back. Thank you. All right. And now we're getting into the Exceed monsters. Dude, we have a lot of cards to talk about. I didn't realize how long this was going to take, but it's fun. All right, Abyss Dweller. I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit, but this is a very generically accessible floodgate, so it should not be in the game. Thank you. Bahamut Shark. Bahamut Shark is a way to summon out Totally Awesome and other things in Mermail, which is why it was eventually banned. which I think is a good ban. I think it's nice that this card is gone. I think it should have been Bahamut Shark. It should not have been Toad, because this hits Mermail harder. The problem was Mermail. The problem was not people hard making Toad. And by banning Bahamut Shark, they got rid of not just the ability to summon Toad, but also Bahamut Shark into Le Virtue Dragon is still a really, really powerful thing. It killed sharks 100%. Yeah, and there's approximately no one who's sad about that. So good riddance. Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, is basically curious, but as a Exceed monster. We're going to have another Exceed monster in Lavalval chain. I guess we can talk about both of these at the same time. This is just a lot of the Exceed monsters are the same principle, where it's like random ways to access your main deck, and they're all banned for good reason, right? Lavalval chain, we talked about it earlier already with the Jin, the releaser of rituals, but just in general, Foolish Burial on an extra deck monster is incredibly powerful. Beatrice, compared to Lavalval chain, is even more powerful because it's a quick effect, and it's also, it can send a spell and traps, which I believe Lavalval chain, oh no, it also sends any card. Okay, Laval even, okay, I didn't know that, but Beatrice as a quick effect means you can use it twice. So there was other combinations like transaction rollback plus a trap you wanted to copy and other things, but like, of course, sending any card from your deck to the grave is completely broken, so they should never come back. We have so many recurring themes. Evil Swarm Ouroboros is a hand loop, which is soft once per turn, so you can recycle it, which is something that Ryziel was doing. They summoned it, ripped the card out of their opponent's hand, and then they summoned it back with Eclipse Twins. And so it potentially even 3 times with Ryziel plugin. So that is that. Hand looping, never come back. This card is Macrocosmos, so please never come back. It's literally all Floodgate, access to the main deck, so useful for bridging, so stay banned. Access to the main deck, so stay banned. I mean, this card, here's the thing, some of these cards could probably come back and it wouldn't matter that much, but they all have incredibly dangerous design, because like summoning any level 4 Earth Warrior or Beast, it just screams to be broken at some point, right? Like, yeah, it's probably something that they could bring back, but honestly, who cares? I don't. I mean, I don't care about an Invoker. Like, if they bring it back, I'm not gonna use it. Turn skip. 3 level 4 monsters, detach a material, then declare monster, spell, or trap. Your opponent cannot activate these cards until the end of the opponent's next turn. So incredibly busted, never come back. Tomahawk is like the equivalent of, I don't know, Link Cross or Gofu or whatever, but out of the extra deck. 2 level 7s, and it makes 5 tokens, which once again is just a card that was printed before Link Monsters existed. So in 2015 or 2014, this card was actually bad. Like, this was a common and no one cared about it, because like, what was the point of it before Link Monsters? You would get tokens that would completely fill your board. You had no way to do anything with them. They would be destroyed during the end phase of the turn. You can do no battle damage, but you simply, you know, you can't exceed with the tokens. You can in theory synchro with them, but because they fill up your entire board, like, you're not gonna have room. It was just not a good card until Link Monsters, and then all of a sudden this card was 6 bodies. So yeah. Turn skip, but with a Gamba. Turn skip or continuous Floodgate even. So yeah. Dude, there's so much toxic stuff that they've made over the years. Here's Diablosis the Mind Hacker. At least this one's worth talking about because it's not just another turn skip. This one's a little different. Detach a material. Look at your opponent's extra deck. Banish a monster from it face down. Which is pretty toxic. And I mean, it didn't really see play until Kashtira came out, because this card was printed in 2017 and it was never worth it. This card on its own, actually isn't that strong. Because yes, I guess there's a difference between toxic and actually good. Which is, by the way, also the same thing with some of the combo decks that we've talked about earlier. Like, just because a card isn't good doesn't mean it's not toxic or should be in the game. Because Diablosis the Mind Hacker, like when this card wins you the game, it feels really bad for the opponent. It's like, and it's of course with Cool Tune releasing recently, also having extra deck rips. There's two differences. The first difference is that Clip is a random banish, which is not nearly as strong. And Cool Tune Crackle is only a temporary banish, so they will get those cards back. So the way that Cool Tune rips the extra deck is very different than what this card does. So, yeah, it was a really, really toxic card if it was paired in Kashtira. Because, of course, with Kashtira, you would have Kashtira Unicorn as well, so you could take multiple cards out of their extra deck. And it would also matter for the zone lock, because the zone lock was only possible if you could banish cards from your opponent, and this would give you a way to do that as early as turn 1. So yeah, I think this card, like, I don't want it to come back, but now that Kashtira isn't really a thing anymore, it probably could without being played, but it still remains a toxic card, so I don't care for it. Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon sends any 3 dragons from your deck to the graveyard. I guess this card is terrible against Malice, because I just realized it says your opponent banishes 3 monsters from their deck. It does send for cost as well, which is crazy. Yeah. No, this card can never come back. Absolutely never. Because it's really easy to summon, because essentially it says 3 level 9 monsters, but any Galaxy Eyes Exceeds monster is basically like any rank 8. Like, as long as you can make a rank 8, you can make a Galaxy Eyes, right? So it's just like 2 level 8. This is essentially 2 level 8 monsters. To send 3 dragons from your deck to the grave. That's completely insane. Okay. Turn skip. Turn skip. This card even worse as a turn skip, honestly, because this card, so this card is just a turn skip, so we don't have to talk about it. As a thought, had 2 uses to it. So this card says, after this card was Exceed summoned, your opponent cannot activate monster effects for the rest of that turn. The most broken thing about this is that As a Thought doesn't activate. So even if you have Imperm in hand, you cannot stop it. Even if you have Veiler in hand, you cannot negate this because it immediately applies if it's summoned. Which was completely busted. But the thing is, this card has 2 uses. So there was ways to Exceed summon it on your opponent's turn. Like, people would use like rank up magic quick plays to summon it on your opponent's turn to turn skip, basically. But even the more relevant and the more powerful use of the card was to summon it on your turn 1 to stop your opponent from hand trapping for the rest of the turn, and then you would just FTK them. Which is basically like a more broken K9 Ripper, but pretty close to what K9 Ripper does, basically. I mean, the thing is, like, K9 Ripper doesn't facilitate FTKing as much because they could have multiple hand traps, but this was like, even if your opponent had like multiple hand traps, you just summon Azathoth and they can't do anything about that. Completely insane card. What's up with Exceeds? Why are like all the Link monsters, or like 90% of the Link monsters tutor out something else, and that's why they're broken? 90% of the Exceeds are just turn skips. What the hell is up with that? Yeah, True King of all Calamities skips your opponent's turn. Oh, this one's not a turn skip. This one was part of a hand loop. So that's better, I guess. Wind Up Carrier Zen Mighty is a card that facilitates wind-up combos, but was especially problematic because it wasn't once per turn. So it would tutor out something like Wind-Up Hunter, and then you would keep looping them for hand looping up to 3 cards or 4 cards. I think in the OCG, they went the other way about it. They banned Wind Up Hunter, but Zen Mighty is legal, which is honestly also fine. Like, this card itself, it's a powerful card, but Wind Up isn't that good. So maybe they could do it the other way around. So, because like, even with this card, I think this card is legal in other formats and it doesn't see any play. I don't even know if Wind Up at the end of the day is combo slop. As much as I loved Wind Up back in the day, I don't really care for it now. And if they brought this card back, it probably still would just be like a combo pile that I wouldn't enjoy that much these days. So I'm indifferent on Zen Mighty. Broad Bull. Broad Bull is probably the one Zodiac that can never come back, because it just has way too many generic applications. This is a soft once per turn, detach and exceed material and add a Beast Warrior from your deck to your hand, which is completely broken. And it's also worth noting that this is one of the most broken Zodiacs because it just needs 2 level 4 monsters. Of course, once per turn you can cheat them out by summoning other Zodiacs over another Zodiac, but Broad Bull in particular is really good generic as well because you don't need a Zodiac for it. You can just do 2 level 4s to search any Beast Warrior. And I think it's essentially in the same vein as King of the Pharaoh Limbs and Infernal Flame Banshee and stuff like that, which personally I think Gallant Granite, like those cards are just problematic. And this one is even better because it's soft once per turn, it's loopable, and it can be made with 1 body if you're actually playing Zodiacs. So it's a shame because this card, like if it just searched Zodiacs, it would probably be completely fine. And it would be a pretty significant buff to Zodiac. Like Zodiac could be a strategy if this card could exist, but yeah. What deck would play this? Lunalight at the very minimum would absolutely play this card. Is the first thing off the top of my head. This card would be very good in Lunalight. But there's probably others that you can do. This can bridge into Radiant. There is infinite possibility. Yes, any Zodiac monster is now Radiant Typhoon combo. Any 2 level 4 monsters are now Radiant Typhoon combo. Tri-Brigade is going to play this card if it's legal. There's so many, even without thinking about it for more than a minute, there's a ton of things you can come up with this card. Like, yeah. And it even, on top of that, if you play more Zodiac monsters, it even turns back into multiple bodies, right? Like you can play Chakanine, so it becomes 2 bodies. You can make Dryden on top, so it's also a pop. Like, this card cannot come back. It's completely broken. Okay, and that's the extra deck. Probably, extra deck is the most broken portion of the ban list. The extra deck cards in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Are by far the strongest asset of decks because they are accessible in every single game. So out of the cards that have been banned in the extra deck, honestly, very, very little can come back or should come back, in my opinion. Almost nothing here should come back, in my opinion. Like, I think the extra deck is the most broken thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! And so, like, I think they, if anything, they should be more aggressive with their bans in the extra deck. Yes, there are some spell cards that are super toxic and super broken, but the fact that those cards are in your main deck and not accessible at all times, I think the extra deck is the bigger problem. Okay, spell cards. Butterfly Dagger Elma. This card should come back. It's look, this card is part of an infinite loop, I believe, with Gearfried. I don't even know its full name, but the Gearfried, the Iron Knight, I think, which is a monster card from way back in the day, which says if it's equipped with an equip card, you destroy that equip card. It just basically, it can be equipped, but the equip card dies. So Elma, if it's destroyed, you add it back to your hand, which if you combine that with Gearfried, it gives you infinite spell activations because you can keep activating, it gets destroyed, you get it back, so on and so forth, right? You just equip it over and over. And you have infinite spell activations, which gives you, I don't know, if you have Royal Magical Library, you can draw your entire deck. If you have another card that says when a card is destroyed or whatever, you can do damage or whatever, that's an FTK. Quite frankly, once again, we are talking the most gimmicky of gimmicks. We're talking the most niche FTK out there, probably. If you are looking to FTK, there are literally, instead of trying to find random multiple card loops that are terrible cards from 2003, you can just activate the Gimmick Puppet Field spell. So I honestly, with the knowledge that they eventually decided to make the Gimmick Puppet a deck, it just blows my mind that cards like this are still on the ban list. Like, who the hell cares that such a gimmicky thing would exist in the game? Like, no one would, genuinely no one would play it, and it would not be good. Yeah. Also, why unban it? The only argument for this is, like, eventually, because the ban list is pretty large at this point, right? Like, there's a couple of cards on it where, like, I understand why they're banned in theory, but, like, it depends how much value you think decluttering the ban list has, right? Like, yeah, you're right. If this card comes off the ban list, no one plays it, so there's technically no benefit. But, like, maybe you could argue they want to make the ban list shorter because it's easier for people to understand, or for people who start playing the game, they can look at it and they don't have to, like, look at all these cards. But you're right. In theory, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, if they bring this card back, it's not going to see play, right? All right, Card of Safe Return. Card of Safe Return is a card that lets you draw a card every time you summon a monster from the graveyard. This card is completely unsearchable and relies on other cards to work. Unironically, I don't know if this card would be that good. It was good back in the day in some decks that would draw like a couple cards off of it consistently. Nowadays, there are some decks where you would consider playing this card, but unironically, I don't know. Mitsurugi draws 2 to 3 every turn. Horus go, yeah, but it's a one-of Card of Safe Return. And like, here's the thing, right? If I activate Imseti and I don't get ashed on it or whatever, or I don't get rolled, does it matter if I have Card of Safe Return? Like, these decks are already winning the game. Like, you're all mentioning decks that, yes, there's decks that can use this card, but like, do you think, put yourself in the position of like you play Horus Yummy or whatever right now, or whatever the Horus decks are. Would you put this card into your deck that basically says, if you are winning, you win even more? I don't think you would. I genuinely don't think you would. I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know if people would actually play this card. But here's the other thing. I'm not really trying to find out. Because, like, yeah, the card is not searchable, I think, with realistic means. And I don't think it would be that crazy. I genuinely don't think it would be that crazy. But I also don't think it's like worth it to bring it back. It's funny because this card is so different from Butterfly Dagger Elma, but I think they fall into the same category of they probably wouldn't see play, but is it worth to try and find out just to declutter the ban list? I don't know. Josh is indifferent to drawing cards. No, it's like, it's not that. It's just that, like, I feel like a lot of these cards, especially with the spell cards, we're going to have a couple of these. The way the game has changed nowadays is so different from when these cards were good that, like, even though their effects are still incredibly powerful, they simply they haven't aged very well. Like, Card of Safe Return is a perfect example for this, because nowadays Yu-Gi-Oh decks are so optimized for 2 things, right? Yu-Gi-Oh decks are so optimized for engine slash starters and extenders, and non-engine to stop your opponent from playing the game or from beating you, right? Decks are so optimized to try and maximize the number of starters, extenders, and interruptions for your opponent, or board breakers, right? And any card that is none of those categories, like, is just inherently viewed as not very good. And that's Card of Safe Return is that category, right? It's not a starter, it's not an extender, it doesn't interrupt your opponent, you're not winning a single game going second because of Card of Safe Return. And going first, if you can already play the game, you're already favored to win, so why play the card? You know, and this applies to a lot of these other cards. So yeah. It misses timing? It can miss timing. Yeah, it says when you can. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Cold Wave. This card can only be activated at the start of main phase 1. Until your next turn, you and your opponent cannot play or set any spell or traps. This card should never come back, because you can just activate it at the start of your main phase 1 when you're going first, and then your opponent, if they, let's say they're playing a deck with a lot of spells and you're not, like Mermail or even Vanquish Soul or K9 or whatever, you just activate Cold Wave because you don't care and your opponent can't play the game. So yeah, definitely not. Definitely don't bring back Cold Wave. All right. And here is, let's do all of these together. Where's the other one? We have Confiscation, Delinquent Duo. Where's the Forceful Sentry? There, down here. Forceful Sentry. Yeah. These are some super old school cards, and if you've played some of the older formats, you'll be familiar with these. These are all hand rips on normal spell cards. Pay 1,000 life, look at your opponent's hand, select the card and discard it. Forceful Sentry, look at your opponent's hand, select the card and return it to the deck. Delinquent Duo, pay 1,000 life, your opponent discards a random card, and then they choose one more to discard. Funnily enough, I think Delinquent Duo out of those three is the worst, because it's random discards. Well, it's one random discard, and then your opponent gets to choose one. So I think Delinquent Duo, because you get no hand knowledge, and because it's a random discard, I think it's the worst one. It should still never come back. Funnily enough, I think, like, I'm not even sure if people would main deck these cards because of how bad they could be going second. Some people probably still would, but these cards would be absolutely one of the most toxic things you could side deck into your deck for going first. Like, imagine Forceful Sentry post side when a combo deck goes first. The first thing they do is look at your hand and shuffle a card away. I mean, that's even more broken than Talents going first, which we've already talked about plenty. Why that card's problematic when you go first. So these two in particular, Confiscation and Forceful Sentry, that let you look at your opponent's hand and get rid of a card. Probably, unless the game fundamentally changes, like, these can never come back. These can never come back. Delinquent Duo is not as broken, but it still is very toxic. So, but the thing is, like, the thing that makes me think Delinquent Duo is not that problematic is because card advantage isn't that good anymore. But, like, still, starting the game with 3 cards is very bad. Okay. Dimension Fusion. Dimension Fusion is unbannable. This card says pay 2,000. Each player summons as many of their banished monsters as possible. Quite frankly, I don't think people would play this card. That's the thing, right? A lot of these old cards are not part of any archetype. As a result, these cards would all just be like random one-ofs in random decks. And you would always ask yourself the question, do I want to play a random card that could be good in my deck, but isn't a starter or not non-engine or whatever, right? Like, yeah, you can play this card in Malice because Malice deck banishes. Would you play this card in Malice? No, you would not. No one in their right mind would put this card in a Malice deck because it's not a starter, it's not a reliable extender, and at the point where you've banished a bunch of your cards, you've probably already won the game. And just in general, I think for the decks that would play it, it's probably nothing but an extender that is situational, so I think it would be fine. This card is searchable. I guess maybe because it says fusion, or is there a card that searches dimension cards? Yeah, okay. Maybe it's okay, but is there a deck that can search it and actually abuse it? Because like there's a lot of cards that are searchable and they don't do shit. Does Verte use it? Yeah, you could Verte for it. You could Verte for it if you have a bunch of banished cards. Quite frankly, I don't think those uses are problematic. I don't think that's a problem, to be honest with you. I think this card would be fine. I wouldn't mind it. All right, let's talk about Giant Trunade and Heavy Storm together. I personally am not a fan of these cards. I'm also not a fan of Harpy's Feather Duster, to be honest with you. I think these cards are the way the game is at the moment. These cards are fine. I think both of these could come back no problem. I think the whole like, oh, Giant Trunade can loop face-up cards in your spell trap zone back to your hand. I think that's bullshit. I think that doesn't matter. Because like, once again, we're talking about an unsearchable spell card. You're not gonna friggin' build a deck around it. So I think Giant Trunade is fine. Heavy Storm is fine. Power level wise, they're fine. I just don't like the design behind these cards personally. I think having these cards in the game, I mean, you guys know I'm a fan of trap decks as long as they're not with like floodgates or negates. So I don't really like this idea of like, oh, we have Heavy Storm and Lightning Storm and Duster. And then, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm biased because I'm a paleo enjoyer. So maybe it's just me personally. I don't want them back. But power level wise, I can't really argue. They're probably fine. This, on the other hand, is probably one of the simplest yet most broken cards on the ban list. This card can never, ever come back to the game. This card is better than Pot of Greed in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! By far. I guess we can talk about Pot of Greed next because it kind of makes sense to talk about these two together. So Pot of Greed is an interesting thing because I remember there was a time and a place where there was an argument made by some pro players that Pot of Greed should come back. I was not one of those players, but there's been people who said Pot of Greed should come back. And their argument was that Pot of Greed increases the number of cards and Yu-Gi-Oh gets better the more cards are involved. You know, the more options players have, and the more engine versus engine you play, the better the game gets, which I can get behind. However, I don't think Pot of Greed accomplishes this for two reasons. First of all, that would imply that both players have access to Pot of Greed, which is not usually the case. It would introduce a lot of variance into like one has it, the other one doesn't have it. But my bigger issue with Pot of Greed in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that, in my opinion, Pot of Greed benefits the player going first way more than the player going second. Because like, you go first, you start with 6 cards, and your opponent only has 5. You're the one who's trying to combo. Who do you think that benefits, right? Like, you're the one going first. You draw starters, you draw extenders, or you draw non-engine to back up your combo, right? Whether it's Ash or Called By or Impulse or whatever, like, you're going first, you're gonna have all the benefits from this card. Whereas the player going second is already behind. If they have Pot of Greed, it would be completely fine, right? If the player going second has Pot of Greed, it'd be fine. Unironically, I would be a fan. Here's a thing that I thought about. Hypothetical scenario: they make a card that is a normal spell and that says, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, draw 2 cards, and then make it hard ones per turn. That would be it'd be a super simple card design, but in my opinion, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. If only the player going second could use that, it'd be like it's kind of the idea of the mole charmies, but it doesn't really it doesn't really punish your opponent for extending more. It's just like if you're going second, you have an extra card, right? I think that would be interesting for the game, right? I think that would be something that I would appreciate if they made that, right? Not every Yu-Gi-Oh card needs to have like 5 different effects to be interesting. I think something simple like that would be cool. But no, as it is right now, Pot of Greed, I would not bring it back because the player going first benefits too much from it. And Graceful Charity, we don't even have to talk about. That card's completely insane. Yeah. Okay. Kaiser Coliseum is a floodgate because it limits the opponent to the same amount of monsters that you have. Admittedly, it's a worse floodgate than some of the cards that are even legal, which is funny to me in some ways because this card, in my opinion, is so much worse than There Can Be Only One, Rivalry of Warlords, Goes Unmatched, Anti-Spell. Like it's I wouldn't bring this card back, don't get me wrong, but I just don't really understand how they reached the conclusion that this card needed to be banned and the other ones didn't. So I don't want this card back, but it's just weird to me that, like, because this is definitely worse than those other cards, 100%. Last Will tutors out any monster from your deck. It's really weirdly worded, but well, nowadays the changed version has a fine wording because it just summons on time of activation. Back then it worked differently, but I mean, tutoring out any monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck would be way too strong. It's less broken on a spell card than it is on a extra deck monster, but yeah. Bro, what are these gift subs right now? What are you doing? Where was I? Okay. Mass Driver. Mass Driver is essentially just an FTK tool because there's ways to tribute 20 monsters with it. You win the game, which is something that historically Ronin Toden was able to do that in like Frog FTK. There's other ways of doing it. So yeah. Good riddance. Doesn't really provide any value to the game. It's funny to me that like this card is banned, but the Cannon Soldiers aren't, because the Cannon Soldiers are more accessible than this card, right? Like it's literally harder to search Mass Driver than it is to search Cannon Soldier, which is weird. It's just one of those weird things about the TCG ban list where like this card is banned, but Cannon Soldier isn't. Like if you could argue like if you're afraid of FTKs, then the other ones should also be gone, but whatever. Now we have an interesting one. Metamorphosis. This card tributes a monster and then summons out a fusion from your extra deck with the same level. So cheating out a fusion monster from your extra deck is obviously really powerful, and there's a lot of really broken targets for this card. However, it falls into this exact same category of cards that we've talked about earlier, where it's not really engine and it's not really non-engine, which makes it a pretty mediocre card in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And this card actually did come back in the OCG and is only being played very rarely. There's one deck that plays it sometimes. Was it Fairy Tail? There was like some deck where like I think you tribute a level 4 to summon like the Fairy Tail fusion monster, which is also a level 4. I think that's what the one I'm thinking of. I think this card would be fine. I think this card would be fine. I don't think people would actually use it to summon stuff like Exterio. I think people would use it to summon like let's say you're playing, I don't know, yeah, like a deck with the Fairy Tail monster, right? And you just bring out the level 4 fusion with any of your starters after you get interrupted or whatever. I think that's fine. So I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back Metamorphosis. The new Clayman? Yeah, they might use it for the new Clayman. That's fine, though. Mirage of Nightmare. Once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, draw until you have 4 cards in your hand. If you do, once during your next standby phase after that, randomly discard the same number of cards you drew. This card was banned, I don't know exactly, around like maybe 2004, 2005, because hear me out. In Ankh Yu-Gi-Oh, it was considered very powerful that you could activate Mirage of Nightmare, draw a couple of cards with it, and then you would use Mystical Space Typhoon to destroy your own Mirage of Nightmare to not have to discard the cards that you drew in the next standby phase. This is a use case that is completely ass in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! The card is not completely unplayable, but I would think it's way too slow to have any impact. This reads draw 4 hand traps. This is the main thing that people always say with Mirage of Nightmares. Like, oh, you just go first, you play a bunch of hand traps in your deck, you activate Mirage, you pass, and then you draw cards. Okay, sure, maybe. Maybe that's a good way to use the card. However, I think in most modern Yu-Gi-Oh decks, that would still be much worse than just playing more starters, combo enablers, or whatever. Also, you are not always going to draw that many hand traps, because if let's say you're playing a deck with a lot of hand traps, you cannot get down to 1 or 0 cards because you play a lot of hand traps. So in a deck that would try to consistently draw hand traps with Mirage of Nightmare, you'd have to play a lot of hand traps, but then how do you get your hand size down if you're opening like Ash Veiler, whatever, right? It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really make sense. The card is awful going second, and the use cases for going first are also mediocre at best. I think this card would not see play. Even in Genesis, I played this card in Genesis Radiant Typhoon, which is the Mystical Space Typhoon deck. In that deck, it was only okay. Wouldn't this make Odeon better? No. Odeon would not touch this card. Not one bit. I think this card is not good in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It would only see play in very niche decks. Like, yeah, Paleo would play this card. Maybe. I don't even know. Oh, Mystic Mine. Mystic Mine. I guess just to spice things up a little bit and not just say Floodgate and move on to the next one, I actually want to give a little hot take here. And I want to preface this by saying that I don't necessarily want Mystic Mine back. However, I do think it is ironic. From my perspective, it's ironic because I think Mystic Mine, while being a floodgate, is a better designed floodgate than cards like Anti-Spell Fragrance or Goes and Match or There Can Be Only One or Dimensional Fissure or Macrocosmos. All of those cards that I just mentioned are all legal in the TCG. And I think that's ironic because the reason why I think Mystic Mine is healthier than those cards is because Mystic Mine helps the player going second. And the other cards are all going first, activate card, win game. And I think that is so much less interesting than what Mystic Mine was back then, right? Like, I actually, and once again, I don't want Mystic Mine back. I really don't. I don't think this type of thing should be necessary to win a game going second. But I did think, like, it felt better in a format, like playing in a format with Mystic Mine felt more fun with without like than playing in a format with like Rivalry or whatever, or Skill Drain or whatever. Mystic Mine is fine. Mystic Mine decks aren't. I mean, yeah, the Mystic Mine deck itself was definitely not a fun deck. I think Mystic Mine as like a non-engine card in other decks was okay. I didn't really mind it that much. Mystic Mine Burn, of course, different story. But like, once again, this is not really an argument I'm trying to make, because just because those other floodgates are legal, I don't think Mystic Mine should come back. It's just, I just wanted to emphasize I think those other cards should be banned, because if Mystic Mine is banned, those other cards that are more toxic, then it should definitely also go. But I mean, it's crazy to me. Sometimes I just have this moment where I think about like how many floodgates we've gotten rid of? Like, how many of these cards have we now talked about? And it was just like, yeah, this is a turn skip, this is a floodgate, so obviously it deserves to be banned. And then you still think about how many floodgates are still legal, and it just blows my mind. But yeah, okay. Moving on. Original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye is a card that some people want back. As a certified Snake Eye hater, I don't want it back, but I think it would be unfair to say that it could never come back. I don't think that's true. As much I don't like Snake Eye, but this card now, they've gotten rid of a bunch of the generic extra deck stuff that Snake Eye was doing. They probably could bring it back. It would. Here's the problem. Here's my problem with it, and it's not actually Original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye's fault, right? But here's the thing that would happen if they would bring back Original Sinful Spoils Snake Eye right now. It would just open up another dimension of Dia Bellstar slop, right? Like there would just be all kinds of decks that could play Dia Bellstar, OSS, but also Dragoon with Dark Magician of Destruction. And I just don't want that. The thing is, like, that's not really OSS's fault. That's more like a Dark Magician of Destruction and Dragoon problem, which I've ranted about in the past, and I'm not happy about it. But like, people are already doing this, right? That's the thing, right? People are already doing Dia Bellstar, set Deception, make Dragoon, also have Deception for Azamina. Like, that's already a broken thing that people are doing. With Original Sinful Spoils, it's just that more people would be doing it in other decks. Like, you could use Dia Bellstar as a starter in Rescue Ace again. You could use Dia Bellstar as a starter in Fire King again. Would that really be that problematic? Not really. That thing itself is fine. But there's just other implications that I'm not happy with, like Snake Eyes being a deck again, or Dark Magician of Destruction. So, personally, I would prefer if the card stayed banned from my perspective. But it's not as problematic as other cards. Okay. Painful. Okay. Select 5 cards from your deck, show them to your opponent. Your opponent selects one and... Okay, Foolish Burial for 4 that gives you a card in your hand cannot come back. Alright? That card cannot come back. Premature Burial probably could. Premature Burial probably could come back, I think. Pay 800, bring a monster back from your grave. The reason why this card is considered better than Monster Reborn, by the way, by some people, is because this card says when this card is destroyed, destroy the equipped monster. It specifically doesn't say when this card leaves the field, so the monster will stay if this card is returned to your hand, which has some potential implications, but really, is anyone going to abuse that in modern Yu-Gi-Oh? It's probably possible, but people probably wouldn't. Like, it's probably just not as good as Monster Reborn, period, and Monster Reborn already sees no play. The fact that it is an equip spell has some interesting applications, but I specifically say interesting applications because I don't think those are problematic. Like, yeah, let Doom Z search it. Who cares? That's not problematic, right? Like, if Doom Z can search Premature Burial, fine, let them. Who cares? I don't think that's a problem. Maybe Mikanko can search it, but dude, realistically, all of those archetypes, here's the thing, all of those archetypes that can search equip spells already have powerful equip spells. It's not like a big deal that they have Premature Burial. I personally, I'm not sad if they never bring this card back. I don't care for it, but I also don't think it would be a problem. Infernoble wants this instead of Living Fossil? Sure. But would it matter? Not really. I don't think it would. Okay. Speaking of problematic equip spells, here's Smoke Raid of the Thief. When this card is destroyed by a card effect, look at your opponent's hand and discard a card from their hand. Yeah, this one can stay banned. All right. If someone tutors out a Premature Burial and revives a monster from their graveyard, sure, I can get behind that. But tutoring out an equip spell that looks at your opponent's hand, and especially in the context of Doom Z as well, because Doom Z can tutor equip spells and destroy them. No, thank you. We don't want hand loops. So Smoke Raid of the Thief, never, never. And that, last but not least, Soul Charge. in the comparison to some of the other banned spell cards, I think Soul Charge, and this is going to sound crazy even for myself, I think Soul Charge is one of the more tame ones. It feels crazy to even say this, but I'm not sure how many decks would play Soul Charge. Because once again, the same principle applies of what we've talked about earlier. Not a starter, not a board breaker, not a hand trap, barely an extender, but like very conditional, like not always an extender. So I'm not sure, dude. I'm not sure. It feels crazy to say because I know I was there. I was there when this card was broken and when it was basically winning games left and right if you had Soul Charge. But like, I don't know if it would be a problem these days. It's hard for me to say. Yeah. It feels weird to say, but I don't think Soul Charge would be the most outrageous thing to bring back eventually. I feel like it'd be played as a sort of board breaker and be actually cool. I mean, yeah, like imagine a world when you like you just like play into a deck that has a lot of removal and you just like throw your engine at it and then eventually activate Soul Charge to bring your stuff back, but then you don't have a battle phase. That could be okay, but is that a toxic interaction in that case? Not really. I think this card might be fine, dude. Are we at a point where Soul Charge is fine? That's crazy. Maybe it's fine. All right, and now trap cards, the really fun ones. Let me take a quick glance here. Okay, there's legitimately two cards that could come back. Okay. Appointer of the Red Lotus looks at your opponent's hand and takes a card away. We've talked about like 5 cards like this, and this is not healthy, so stay banned. Branded Expulsion is very funny to me. Because this card is banned because it gives a card to your opponent, which we've talked about previously. We've talked about like, oh, Gimmick Puppet Nightmare and such. The funny thing about Branded Expulsion is that Branded has a better way to do this, which is Albion the Sanctifier Dragon, which is not a main deck brick. It's just a card in your extra deck that does this, and they left it alive, and this is banned, which is stupid. It doesn't make sense. So, yeah, I have no idea. This one allowed 1-card combos, though. That doesn't matter to me. Branded is a deck full of engine. They never have 1-card combos. It doesn't really make a difference to me. In an ideal world, both of them are banned. Dimensional Barrier. Turn skip. Can never come back. Harpy's Featherstorm. Turn skip. Can never come back. Imperial Order. Game skip. Can never come back. Last turn. Ruling Nightmare. Absolute Ruling Nightmare. Funnily enough, like this is, once again, it's an auto-win FTK card. So like, it probably power level wise, this card could probably come back. So the way this card works is really funny. This card can only be activated during your opponent's turn when your life points are 1,000 or less. Select the monster on your side of the field and send all other cards on the field and in their respective owner's hand to their respective graveyards. After that, your opponent selects and special summons a monster from their deck in face-up attack position and attacks your selected monster. Any battle damage is treated as 0. The player whose monster remains alone on the field at the end phase of this turn wins the duel. Any other case results in a draw. You might be able to tell from the wording of this card that it's very problematic. This card is from 2003 and the last printing is from 2005. This card has no PSCT whatsoever. No one knows how exactly this card works. it's a ruling nightmare, and I think that's the reason it's banned. Unironically, I think if this card just existed, it would be fine, because once again, no one would jump through all the hoops to actually do this. I think Stevie did this in Genesis format where the card is legal. He entered like a Genesis side event trying to make last turn work, and it just created like there's like a random clip out there that was like 7 judges trying to figure out how to resolve the last turn situation, which is funny, but competitively speaking, I don't think it would be very relevant. But I think this is one of those cards where they're just better off leaving it banned to avoid this sort of thing, right? So yeah, it's very funny though. Red Reboot is another card that's legal in Master Duel, and whenever you play a deck that's weak to it and your opponent has it, you basically are not taking part in the game, which is why it's like a turn skip, but only for trap decks, pretty much. Which is something that, once again, people like to use certain toxic strategies as a justification for a card like this. People are like, oh, this card is fine because I hate Odeon, and trust me. If you've watched any of my Master Duel streams, you know this. There's no one in the world who despises the Odeon deck as much as I do, all right? The answer is not Red Reboot. The answer is not Red Reboot. The answer to Odeon is just banning some of the Odeon cards. As it's just that simple. The answer to Floodgates is also not Red Reboot. The answer to Floodgates is ban the Floodgates. The answer to combo decks is not Maxi. The answer to combo decks is ban the combo decks, right? That's just how it works. It doesn't... Having a random card that you might or might not draw to auto-win the game is just not a healthy play pattern. Because then the gameplay it provides is like, either you have the card and you win and it feels terrible for your opponent, or you don't have the card and you just lose because their deck is allowed to exist in a power level that isn't acceptable. And that feels terrible for you, right? And so it's a zero-something. You're not playing a 2-player game with these cards. Red Reboot should not exist. Oh, wait, here's another card. Yeah, this card could come back. Return from the different dimension. This card is ass. Literally ass. This card genuinely, like, this is not even like, oh, this could come back and it would be interesting. This card's terrible nowadays. Pay half your life points, special as many banished monsters, and then banish them during the end phase. This card is just bad. Like, we were talking about Dimension Fusion potentially being able to come back. This card is Dimension Fusion, but unsearchable and like slow. This card is genuinely bad. It was banned because of Dragon Rulers, I think. That was the one time this card actually saw play was Dragon Rulers. It got banned during Dragon Rulers and then never came back, which is weird. Trap Trick? Brother. There are approximately 50 million other trap cards that are more powerful to Trap Trick for, or Rollback. Like, all the things that you guys are yapping right now are things that apply to every single trap card. Every single trap card can be accessed with Trap Trick or copied with Rollback. Why does that mean the card can't come back? What about Malice? You think Malice would play Return from the different dimension? You guys have to be rage baiting right now. There were multiple people in chat who said yes. There's no way. There's no way you guys are. I refuse to believe you guys are serious. There's no shot you guys are serious. That's insane behavior. You guys are trying to rage bait me right now, and I know it, and it's not going to be successful. Royal Oppression says pay 800 life points to negate a special summon, so it wins the game immediately when you flip it. Self-destruct button is another ruling nightmare and also creates draws, which is not something that's want. I don't even know, is there another card? Is there another card in the game right now that can even create a draw? Because they reworded Ring of Destruction, so it no longer can. like legal. I mean, I know we've just looked at last turn, but it's banned. Exodia. Right. If both people play Exodia or draw Exodia at the same time, there's a cubic that burns both for 3,000. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, this card could actually see play. What happens? A genuine question. Genuine question. In a match of Yu-Gi-Oh, if it's game 1, what happens if it's a draw? Is it 1-1? Or do you restart game 1? 1-1. Okay. I don't think I've ever had it happen. Who decides who starts? It's 0-0. Rules say winner of the match is the first to win. Wait, so it just doesn't matter? It happened to me during a YCS. It's 1-1. Wait, how did it happen to you during a YCS? What happened? Lyrolask crashed? Oh, is Lyrolask like both players take the damage? They had one that said that, right? Okay. I don't know. This happens. It's never happened to me, if I remember correctly. So it's very niche. But this card actually, if it was legal, I think it would actually be, depending on how it's handled in like the rule book, it could be an interesting card for certain decks. But yeah, they're never gonna bring it back because it's a ruling nightmare. Okay, here's another card that is genuinely not very good. It's super gamba and very meme, but I think this card, look, hear me out. Okay, hear me out. 6 Sense is a card that when it was printed in 2013, saw people played it in Dragon Ruler, because what this card says, declare 2 numbers from 1 to 6, then your opponent rolls a 6-sided die, and if the result is one of the numbers you declared, you draw that many cards. Otherwise, send the number of cards from the top of the deck to the graveyard equal to the result. This card is funny to me because back then there was a huge debate on what you should call with 6 Sense. Was it correct to call 5 and 6 or 3 and 4 or whatever? And the reason why this card was played is because the format was a lot slower, so it being a trap card didn't matter that much. And the second thing was like Dragon Rulers. In Dragon Rulers, a lot of the outcomes were okay because like drawing cards was obviously good, but even milling cards was okay because you would get value from that by milling the Dragon Rulers, right? So that was that. Nowadays, this card is way too slow. There's like no world in which this card sees play in any regular meta deck. The only deck that would play this card is Paleozoic, I think. So gamers, please let me have it. Just let me have it, dude. Can I just have it? No one else cares. It's not even going to be that good in Paleo. It's just funny. Can I have it? Can I have 6 Sense? No? All right. I think this card could come back. Summon Limit should stay banned forever. Trap Dust Shoot is another way to look at your opponent's hand and take a card away, so that should stay banned forever. Ultimate Offering is a terrible Yu-Gi-Oh card and could be allowed at 40 copies per deck and no one would play a single copy of it. During your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, pay 500 to normal summon a monster. I have no idea why this card is still banned. It's just a bad card, period. Now, this card was like, I don't even know when, hold up. When was this card banned? Because like, it's legal in Edison format, which is already past like Gadget Prime. Because of gadgets? But how? Gadgets, like... Gadget... was it Gadget Exceed? Like when like... Oh no, okay, I remember. Yeah, okay. Now the reason this card was banned was because there was one archetype in which this card actually made sense, which was gadgets. Because gadgets are not hard ones per turn. When they're summoned, you can search another gadget. Which was initially something that people would do, but gadgets are all just like small monsters. You just spam a bunch of bodies, no one cared. Until Exceed monsters. And with like Exceed monsters, all of a sudden, Ultimate Offering plus a gadget would summon like a bunch of rank 4s. Bro, someone said 2012 Ryzeal, that's funny. But basically that, right? This is like freaking 2013 Onomat. But I guess that's the only period in time where you could consider Ultimate Offering a problem. But nowadays, this card is completely unusable. And then I guess we are done because Vanity's Emptiness needs no introduction. Neither player can special summon monsters. Yeah. Okay. And this is what people have been asking for. People always say like, hey, can this card come back? Can that card come back? Now we've talked about every single card that is currently banned. And I will say most of them could stay banned. There's not that many that could come back. Some of them definitely can. There's a couple cards on here that would change nothing. A couple of them are also just banned because they are memed. Because they're a meme, like Victory Dragon or the self-destruct button or Last Turn. There's a couple of cards on here that are just in here because they're ruling nightmares. Some cards could come back. Some cards would actually be interesting if they came back, but for the most part, I mean, if there's anything to learn by looking at the Forbidden and Limited list in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's that Floodgates, turn skips, lingering floodgates, hand looping, randomly summon extra deck monsters that summon from the main deck or search from the main deck or send from the deck to the graveyard, negating hand traps, omni negates in the extra deck. Basically, that sums up like all the cards that are banned and should never come back, right? So yeah, that's that.